Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Game Informer Show. I'm your host, Ben Hansen, joined by the great Jeff Marchiafava.
Hey!
We got JV Gwaltney.
Hello there, everyone.
And we got old starry eyes.
Hey!
Jeff
How's it going, buddy?
Cork. Real good. Good to see you. You're
to
looking
see you as
sharp.
well.
It's been a while, Jeff Cork. And it's
has.
been a while, Jeff M. I bet the last time
It
we were
is.
together was on that Thanksgiving debacle.
Probably, yeah. That was terrible.
JV, when you wake up in the morning and you realize that you're going to be on the podcast that day, how do you feel about it?
I feel excited.
Do you really like being on the podcast?
Yeah, I love being on the podcast.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Like your favorite thing at GI?
It's one of my favorite things, yeah.
Is that right? What would you put above it?
Oh, man. Playing video games at my desk when I get to.
Comb.
Ha! I feel kind of bad right now coming between the two Jeffs, though. I
Yeah,
feel
you
like the
blew it.
Yoko Ono.
You shouldn't feel
this.
that bad. That massive, weird, teased hair. should
Yeah.
feel
I can't
bad
even see
coming
Cork
between
past
us.
it.
It's really bad.
Yeah.
Welcome to
sorry,
my world,
guys.
by the way. I sit directly between these two if you go kitty corner. Anyways, we got a hell of a show, you guys. We're talking about Horizon Zero Dawn, which is out next week. Talking about Mass Effect Andromeda, which JV got to see some
Oh,
cool
I did.
new
That's
hot
right.
stuff.
That's a thing.
Talking about Halo Wars 2, RTS in 2017. Who would have thunk it? Maybe touch on Night in the Woods a little bit. Cork, you're here primarily for moral support, and then also to talk about Psychonauts, the Rhombus of Ruin, which is the PSVR.
It's true.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you about that. And then we have some great emails from the community. And then after that, this is like Halley's Comet or Hale Bob Comet.
Hell, Bob.
The two Hale Comets that we should all talk about because this is a big event, right? We have Nintendo Switches in the office. We've been playing a hell of a lot of them. So the final segment on the show is going to be us talking about what it's like to spend a lot of time with those controllers, with the console, with the UI.
Those big buttons, those comfortable controllers.
And well, we'll get into all of that. There's a lot to talk about, so we have a new crew coming in at the end of the show to talk all about playing the Switch, early impressions. There's still a big day one update that's coming, so keep that all in mind. But it's a good chat. So for now, Horizon Zero Dawn. Jeff Marchiafava, you reviewed it.
I did.
What did you think of this?
I liked it.
Well, I'll be damned. You gave it an 8.75.
I did, yes.
Okay, give me the evolution of your thoughts on it. Started out, then mid-game, end-game. How did your
Okay,
review go up and down?
Yeah. I started out, I enjoyed most of it. There's some stuff at the beginning that I don't want to talk about for spoiler reasons.
Okay.
I was a little not on board. But I had played it previously at E3 last year, I think, so I had a good idea of what the gameplay was going to be like, and that still met all my expectations for, fun, very challenging combat. The robot dinosaurs are super cool. So that took me through the first couple hours, and then the game world really opens up. At first I was a little turned off by kind of the activities and how much it takes from other open world games.
Okay.
And that kind of carried over throughout the entire experience. But the biggest surprise was how much the story picks up.
Is that right?
Yeah. And
At what point, at what percentage does the story really take off? Because it seems fine in the first couple hours at least.
yeah, I'd say it kind of carries out throughout the entire experience. I mean, you always have like those main missions that you can when you decide to tackle them, depends on how quickly you get sick of doing a bunch of side quests and stuff like that. But towards the end is when it really starts answering questions that it has kind of been teasing the entire time.
Okay.
And you get a lot more lore stuff. And then towards the end, there's like a 45-minute segment where it's just like, okay, we are going to answer every question that you have in just this marathon of like lore and all these different details.
And you
about...
appreciate that? It's not just a Metal Gear cutscene of...
No, I mean, it's mostly some of it's audio logs, some of it's cutscenes, but by that point I was really invested in, the events that are going on while you're playing and all of the kind of past mysteries of what happened to the previous world. And all of that surprised me with how good it ended up being.
Really?
So,
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
It's also amazing to think of like a new IP. Presumably Sony's banking on this being a new franchise as well for the PS4 or beyond. And it's amazing that they wouldn't hold anything back. That'd be so easy to do first time out of the gate.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to think that this is Guerrilla Studios' first like non-shooter. Like, that's what I've been taking with is like just how impressive this open world action RPG game is, and they've never made anything like it before. Like they've done Killzone, and they had a game before that was like Shell Shock or something.
Yeah,
it was,
Shell Shock Nom
it's
67.
really bad. It was super bad.
Oh, really? Did
Yeah.
you play it?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Well, who
Yeah.
plays that
I
game?
make poor life choices.
Okay,
that's why I'm sitting
sure.
at this table. you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's just interesting to think like, okay, here's Killzone. Those shooters are fine. They have like a cool, atmospheric presentation, and then you have Horizon, which is way different.
It seems like they were kind of moving toward larger. Like the last Killzone game was as close to an open world without being able to say it's an open world.
But
as
yeah,
you
it was
can
still
get.
like very corridory, but like there were segments that were bigger. So I can see that, but it just feels radically different from anything else they've done, and that's super impressive to me.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like a critique, Jeff, if I'm reading this right, is that it felt like, okay, we're making an open world. We need to check all of those open world boxes.
Yeah.
They felt like they needed to maybe not forge a new path yet, since it is their first time out of the gate, right? They feel like, let's just hit par on open world features and then have some really unique environments and enemies to fill that out.
And the enemies are, the combat against the dinosaurs is kind of like the core thing that you can tell they spent a lot of time on designing all the different types. There are like 25 different types of these dinosaurs.
Catch them all.
And they all behave differently and stuff. And so I can excuse, like clearing out bandit camps, which feels very much like Far Cry, upgrading, all your inventory spaces by hunting animals, which is also very Far Cry, all those kind of tropes. And I mean, the map is probably like just the best example of like open world bloat, where you zoom out and yes, it's a huge environment, but there are just so many tiny little icons of all that crap, and most of it, you can freely ignore.
I wonder if I'm trying to figure out how much of it is just the game as it's presented to everybody, or are you personally just a little fatigued from the open world formula?
That was something that I was trying to figure out as I was reviewing it as well. And, I guess we'll see on February 28th what, what everyone else thinks. It's the other I haven't read a bunch of reviews on it, but it's been getting a lot of super high scores, like 9s and 9.5s and whatever. And some of the lower scores than mine were also criticizing that the, reused tropes from open world. So it's hard to say.
Yeah, I'm of two minds about that, because I do agree that like there is a lot borrowed from like Assassin's Creed and like The Witcher and Batman in particular. There are a lot of side missions where you're tracking trails as like a detective.
Vision,
It's the detective vision makes a return.
I was just talking to Dan Tag about that. Like, who? It's a feature you can do, but who gets into that and is like, this is fun? Who is actually experiencing the sensation of having fun while following those trails? What is that?
It's certainly a thing, but at the same time, though, I think what makes me forgive those side quests and really get into them is, open world games have a problem with content and story. Like, there's always a tension between them. But with Aloy, I feel like pretty much everything you're doing in the game ties into who she is as a character and who she's becoming. Like, okay, so you're out there crafting stuff, you're hunting stuff, you're trying to figure out how to defeat these robots. It ties into who she's becoming. So it works for me. Whereas in like Grand Theft Auto, there's just a bunch of crap you can do for whatever reason. It doesn't necessarily tie into the story. Same with Fallout, whatever.
Sure.
Like there's this huge strain in Fallout 4 in particular between like the main story and like all this other stuff you can do. You're supposed to be a parent who's concerned about their child, but hey, let's go kill a bunch of bandits. Let's waste time doing that. But in Horizon, I feel like honestly everything I've done, and keep in mind I'm only like 20 hours in.
Still?
I feel like I can say honestly though, yeah, this is a thing that Aloy would do. It's not a waste of her time. It like focuses in on honing her abilities. It, helps decide who she is as a character, so on and so forth. And I think that's really impressive.
Real quick, Jeff, how long is this game?
It's going to depend on how much side content you did.
Yeah.
I played about 55 hours.
Holy.
And
okay.
I did a lot of the side stuff. The other thing that I want to mention is so you have like some of the random activities or whatever, but they break down the main missions as like main quest, secondary quest, and then errands. And all three tiers are pretty worth doing. Like even I was surprised by some of the errands where I was putting off main quest stuff and like, I really want to see how this plays out. They add enough twists, and some of them involve characters that you'll meet in the main quest lines, and then they'll kind of get relegated to, the lower ones. but all of that story content is pretty good.
Yeah, I was actually, Elise and I were playing it over the weekend. We were texting back and forth about it because the virtual life, the column right this week was actually just a discussion between us.
Okay.
About Aloy, but we were texting about other features in the game. And one of the things I really, the way I like to think about Horizon right now is that it's like, has almost like a BioWare sort of level of writing, not quite there, but old school BioWare, like Baldur's Gate and so on and so forth.
Okay.
Set in a game that plays a lot like Assassin's Creed. And I just really like that. I really like sort of that RPG writing and sort of the branching stuff. It's very minor branching, but and also how we determine who Aloy is, because there are also choices she gets to make and how she responds to stuff. Whether she's impulsive, whether she thinks, situations through critically, or she's more of a person who feels things out and is sympathetic to everyone who she comes across.
And those icons are represented by like a brain.
Yeah, a brain, a heart, or a fist.
They're cavemen after all.
Yeah, but it's just interesting the choices they've made, design choices they've made. And how it all comes together. Like, I think it comes together really well. It's not a rough experience. This is not like Far Cry 2 where, there are a lot of ideas here, but they don't all like go together well. It's
Final Fantasy 15.
Yes, Final Fantasy 15, exactly. It's just such a smooth experience that does a lot of experimental stuff, and they pull it off really well.
Like, there's without getting into spoilers, there's a situation early on where you run into someone who's very mean to you, and you can choose how to react. And I chose to be compassionate.
Sure.
And you run into this person again, and then they immediately just go to that one moment and brag about it and won't shut up about it. And I immediately just started shooting arrow after arrow into his face, and it didn't pause his speech. So I mean, you can still be a real dick. It doesn't matter.
Are you sold on Aloy as a character yet, Cork? I don't know how deep into it you are.
She could just be a floating bow with a wig hovering nearby, and I'd be fine with it. Like, I don't think there's anything particularly interesting about her, other than the fact that her status in this society. I think that the world they've created is interesting.
Right.
But she doesn't seem any different from any other protagonist in any other open world
Can
video game.
I ask you how far you are? Like,
I'm about 10 hours in.
Okay, all right. So there are things that might change your mind later, but let's not go into that.
So
there are things that may change your mind.
May change my mind later on. Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah, I would say that ultimately, to me, she ended up being kind of the weakest link of the story, and that makes it sound really bad. She's not. She's a perfectly fine character, but I ended up kind of feeling like Cork did ultimately, that like her role in the
bow
story,
with the wig.
Yeah. Okay. No, her role in the story is kind of the most interesting thing about her, and she doesn't evolve a ton as a character as it goes on.
Okay. What about just like the overall RPG nature of this game? Is it going to appeal to those hardcore RPG fans? I mean, the action in the combat I think feels absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
but
I think if it seems like an RPG in the same way that Far Cry games are.
Yeah,
like, it's definitely cut from the same cloth, and I happen to be a big fan of that. So
you're wearing that cloth right now.
I'm wearing that cloth right now.
They're
exactly.
RPG light systems.
Yeah, absolutely. Where you've got your different. You're like, I want to focus more on being sneaky, or I'd really like to have like greater survivability, so I can take more damage and stuff. So there are paths you could choose to do, but ultimately, I'm assuming most people are going to dabble in all.
Right.
Yeah. When you finished, were you able to complete most of the skill trees, or did you have to make some really hard decisions?
I completed most of them. There were some that I just wasn't interested in. I may still have a couple like unassigned skill points right now in on my save where it was like, maybe I'll go down one of these branches, but it's not going to make a huge
That's
difference.
always a weird point in an open world game when you like keeps telling you have unused skill points. You're like, you know what, I'm fine.
We're good here. We're good.
I can do what I need to do.
It's like throwing away a gift certificate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you're not going in and like changing her core stats or anything like that. It's just you'll have some abilities that you can unlock, and you do kind of shape that based on your play style.
The amazing thing to me, just playing a couple hours before release, before day one patch or anything, in my experience, this has run just rock solid.
Yeah.
I think everyone fillets Gorilla correctly for like their technical masterpiece. No, absolutely they do. No, that's true. But I'm just amazed that there's not a single hiccup. I feel like if any other publisher, any other developer tried a world this ambitious, especially pre-release, pre-day one patch, it would be hiccuping here and there. But I didn't experience any of that.
Yeah, and the draw distance is insane.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and it was definitely sort of a Todd Howard moment. I was like, okay, I can see that mountain, but I can't go there and touch it. That's just bullshit. And then I went there and I started climbing up it. I was like, okay, this is a thing I can do. All right. And that, you know, that moment kept happening over and over again where I'd see interesting structures that I wanted to go to and could and actually interact with them.
Yeah.
And like the landscape itself is cool because it's not just sort of this barren landscape. There was one time where I got in a fight with like the saber-toothed tiger machine, the sawtooth, I think is what it's called. And I was hiding behind a rock and I was trying to be, you know, clever, and I would poke out and I'd shoot arrows at it, flaming arrows, thinking, oh, I can't come up this slope. It can't get at me. What the machine did after a few volleys of arrows is it ran up the slope and crashed through the rock and killed me.
Through the rock?
Through the rock. Like it broke the rock. It wasn't a glitch. Like it broke the rock.
Yeah,
it broke through the environment.
Some destructible environment kind of stuff in
Jesus
there,
Christ.
too.
Yeah, it was just a whoa. That was really cool.
That's what I want from this game, Jeff. And I haven't experienced it too much in the early sections yet because it turns out the little raptor creatures, which are animated exactly like Lost World raptors. Yeah, like they're surprisingly one-hit kills even out of the gate if you just hit them right in the eye. But did you have those experiences later on where you're hiding in the trees and there's a T-Rex chasing after you?
Yeah, and it is the, you know, the Thunder Jaw is the big T-Rex kind one. And the first time I went after that one, it was a 30-minute fight. It was like my Moby Dick of like I was just continually fighting it. I had to, you know, I'd have to run away, hide, try and, you know, like figure out which pieces to chip off.
My
and
God.
They're really big and really impressive.
And it's
fights.
doing a good job of keeping track of the pieces you've knocked off. It's not like it goes a certain distance and resets itself.
No, yeah, yep. They'll stay there, and you'll knock, you know, like its disc launcher off, and it will be laying there. And you can come pick it up and use it against it. And
sorry, but you said that this also the game it does explain why these machines are there.
Yes,
and how like their purpose and who is manufacturing them, which I'm very interested in learning.
Yeah,
because it does not make any damn sense.
And like I said, like I was very surprised by how many questions it answered, and it all mostly makes sense.
Yeah.
Does it set itself up for a future franchise?
Yeah,
it does everything.
It does everything.
My God,
that's really impressive. Like I hope I get there and feel the same way because there have been so many games, especially like franchise games. The one that comes to mind most recently is Deus Ex: Mankind Divided, where it presents all these questions and then it ends with a newsreel that answers nothing, none of the major questions. It's just like, well, this is the state of the world now. You'll find out, you know, the answers to the questions you want in the next game, which of course, you know, probably isn't coming for
Deus Ex Reactions Divided. Yeah. Look at that game.
But another point, you're talking about the Watcher Raptor things earlier. A good thing they do with that is that when you when you get into encounters that have tons of robots and you're surrounded by them, like those Raptor Watcher things become much more anxiety inducing. Like there are stronger versions of them and they'll come up to you and, you know, while you're hiding in the grass, and you'll be doing things like, please don't find me, please don't find me. And then they find you, and suddenly you have like 10 massive monsters.
Yeah, they'll alert everyone else. That's
everything.
They're not monsters, they're animals, Jason.
Sure, whatever. But particularly the ones in the air will just tear you to pieces.
God, this is impressive. Congrats to Sony and Guerrilla for pulling this off.
Yeah.
It's amazing to have new IP this bold. Despite the open world trappings.
Yeah.
It's really, really good. It's probably, I honestly don't know. It's between this and Yakuza for my favorite game that I've played this year so far. I know it's early, but like I just love them both so much for vastly different reasons.
For sure. God, I can't wait to play more. Cool. Hey, Jeff, we kind of need that chair back.
Oh, I'm sorry.
If you could.
Should I clap or?
Please do.
Okay. All right.
Bye. Who do we have here?
Oh, gosh.
Ben Reeves.
I was on the toilet. Help. Why am I here?
Keep going. Ben Reeves, you are technically here to talk about Halo Wars 2.
On the toilet.
But I feel like a more pressing thing that you probably have some input on is Mass Effect Andromeda. That's you, JV. So what is your story? What's your deal? What do you know about this game?
You want the whole thing, the whole biography?
Well, no. I really don't. But JV, you recently went to what? BioWare? Montreal?
Yeah. I went to EA, actually.
Oh.
We went to EA in San Francisco. They were putting on an event with BioWare where we got to play 3 hours of Mass Effect Andromeda.
What section? Give me the slices.
We got to play through the first hour. They actually played the opening cinematic for us.
Okay.
Oh,
And then
cool.
we played the first mission, which is like an hour long, and then they jumped us ahead to a midsection and like midway through the game where we had like access to most of the squad mates, and we run around the ship and we could explore a planet and stuff.
Wow.
First thing you see in the opening cinematic, is it a planet?
No,
Starfield.
Is it the Ark?
Yes.
BioWare
Star
presents.
Destroyer.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's Starfield and then BioWare presents.
Uh-huh.
Fantastic.
Perfect.
Set in the
Do you
So
get
is
a
it-
pick
Oh.
who you played as?
Yeah, we pick who we play as.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
But
Strider
did
to
you get
go
a
for?
sense then for how different the story changes depending on who you pick?
No. We were only allowed to pick one and play that.
Oh, so you were allowed to pick, but you were only allowed
Yeah,
to
we
pick.
were said you could play male or female.
Is there any way you can clap your way out of here?
Well, I'm just like trying to, like, this is something
Clap
that
your
people
face.
are interested in.
Right,
here,
no.
I hear
We're
you.
about to clap JV's face.
So would you choose Sarah or Scott? Who'd you
I went
go
with Sarah.
Okay,
Yeah,
what'd you
Sarah
think of
Ryder.
that as Sarah as a character going throughout the opening? Because we saw it with Scott on the cover story trip.
I mean, I didn't see it with Scott, so I don't really have any like.
What was
frame
your
of
impression of
comparison.
Sarah?
I like Sarah.
How is
She's
it
cool.
spelled?
Oh boy,
like
I
a
think it was with
space
the
version?
H. I think it's with the H.
So it's not like SER.
no,
like the number 4H.
No, but-
okay.
But I sat down to play it. I was kind of nervous because Mass Effect 2 is my favorite game.
Wow,
Like straight up.
That's right. Okay.
And I think my biggest fear as someone who did not care for Dragon Age Inquisition is that this would be Mass Effect Inquisition with, sort of like a bunch of fetch quests and a huge open world with gameplay that's not that great, but has, a good story.
Dragon
But
Age?
yeah,
Are you
Dragon
talking
Age. Yeah, Dragon Age Inquisition in
Are you
particular.
sure you're talking about Dragon Age?
Yes. But I actually really dug what I played.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I got to get a slice of basically, what BioWare thinks Mass Effect is for fans.
Uh-huh.
And, that was pretty much 1-1. I got with like what worked with 2 and 3 in particular. I got to explore the ship. I got to go talk to various crewmates. I didn't have much time to because we only had 3 hours, but, it was like a sampling of them.
That's so weird to have a ticking clock for like, all right, I got to attach myself personally to, I guess, the driver, Solarian pilot of this ship. Let's
Can I
go.
lick your face?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, go.
I mean, that's basically what I did. Like, I went and talked to them and I was like, let's flirt.
yeah.
Like,
Let's
that's what I did.
flirt.
And this game is horny. No, this game is horny as hell.
How horny is it?
Like, I talked to one to the Asari, PB,
yeah.
and she was like, buy me drinks later. And there's, no telling what else will spill out of my mouth. I was like, wow, all right.
Gallon of
PB,
blood.
TMI.
Yeah, it was pretty lewd, but
What's new though? Like, what new squad mates did you learn about that you didn't know about before?
there's Vetra, who's the Turian, so
Yeah.
Garrus's replacement. She's basically like stern ship mom. She's very
I'm into
cold, analytical, kind of hostile, but also clearly cares for everyone. PB, people have known about. I got to talk to Liam a bit, who's like one of the human companions, and he has a British accent, and he was a cop in a former life. That's all I know.
Oh,
Like he
Garrus
seems
style.
A Bobby?
not a Bobby, just a cop.
Mm.
He just seemed, he seemed very Caden-esque, and that he was kind of uninteresting. But I only had a slice of.
Kim's gonna smash through the wall in a second for saying
How
that.
dare you? Yeah,
You know me and my Caden.
yeah. Cora, who's the one with the hawk.
What?
The mohawk thing going on?
Okay, this is a human with a mohawk,
Or
not
the
an
Fae.
alien with a pet hawk.
No.
Big difference.
Oh, wow. I would've
She's a
preferred the
biotic.
latter.
She's kind of sassy. She's got this like Ruby Rose thing going on.
What does that mean?
That's like
a
an
person?
actress. Like a person.
Really? What-
Yeah,
Orange is
from
the
like
New
John
Black.
Wick 2 and Orange is the New Black.
No.
Television things.
Not familiar.
All right.
It's just she's kind of Jack-esque.
Yeah, she's jackass. She's sort of a
Okay.
badass with biotic powers.
Less annoying than Jack?
Less
no.
troubled.
Yeah, we'll go with
Did you
that.
jettison crew members?
No, not that I saw. There's Drac, who's like the new Krogan. He just
Yeah.
seems sort of grumpy. He's older than Rex and Grunt.
Okay.
So that's all I
Oh.
know, really. And then there's one more I saw. Jaal, who's like the new species. No, really, that's his name.
Is that how you
Jaal.
pronounce it in South?
No. Anyway,
Jal eat.
yeah, he's sort of mysterious, a resistance fighter. Didn't find out much about him. Tried to flirt with
Yeah.
him, and he was like, "I have deep, complicated feelings about this situation, so I'm going to excuse myself from it."
They've
So we
really-
don't know if the new species is a horny species.
Yeah, we
or
don't
not.
know. We don't know if they have sex or not.
Oh.
We don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
so what?
It's complicated.
Yeah, do you know
Yeah.
the name of that species?
It starts with an A.
Angora.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
They've released a bunch of like those bios online.
Yeah,
videos,
like
and I
little
watched some
snippet
of them,
bios.
and I'm like, I don't know if I like any of these characters yet. But after 3 hours, did you
Yeah,
kind
that's-
of grow attached to any of them?
That was my biggest concern sitting down was like, okay, I loved the characters in the first 3 Mass Effects. Like, that's what makes Mass Effect for me is like just chilling with Garrus,
Yeah.
shooting bottles and stuff. Like, what is going to be the biggest obstacle here is like whether or not I get attached to these characters, and within like 5 minutes or so, like just roaming around the ship talking to them, or like being on the planet and listening to the squad chatter, like that's basically mostly alleviated. Like, I'm interested in these people. Like, I'm not in love with them, right off the bat, but
Right.
that's to be expected. But I do want to know more about their stories.
You're in flirt with them.
Yeah, I'm in flirt
Mhm.
with them,
Okay.
exactly. I want to go on dates with them. Yeah, I don't necessarily want to have space babies with them. But,
Right.
we'll go get ramen and then watch a movie.
This was my biggest takeaway from seeing that game up there. We were in Montreal and whatnot. It's so weird to see new Mass Effect content and feel kind of distant from it. And I remember I had this with Mass Effect 2, Mass Effect 3, where it takes a while to get into the new swing of things, the new groove.
Mm.
So by the end of this, you felt like, okay, this is Mass Effect. This feels like home.
Oh yeah. When I walked away from it, I feel like everything that works about Mass Effect was there, and also everything that was sort of what's the word, clunky about Mass Effect, like the whole BioWare animation thing where characters express their frustrations by having like wild hand gestures that are just all over the place.
Uh-huh.
Guess what? That's still here.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Sort of weird facial animations, just sort of the stuff that's again clunky but also endearing about it. So like all the flaws, like the combat, the gunplay itself is kind of lousy, but the powers are cool and
Gunplay's lousy, really?
Yeah,
I
the gun-
thought like Mass Effect 3's
Yeah,
was
by the time
fine.
3
it's
rolled around.
it's kind of a step back from 3.
Really?
What?
Yeah.
How so?
The guns just feel like pea shooters. Like the enemies, like the vet, which are basically like new versions of the collectors.
Uh-huh.
It feels like you're shooting bullet sponges. But once you get the powers,
I think
in
it's
there,
Ket, by the way.
Ket, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get the powers in there and you're like throwing enemies across the room, like there are new powers too. Like you can pick an enemy up and like throw them into explosive barrels, and it's just so much fun.
Very specific biotic.
That's
All
that's
right.
the thing that I did.
Specific power.
What about the open world? Does it feel like Inquisition?
That
after
was
all
another concern. No, it doesn't feel like Inquisition, but my biggest concern was like if you go back and you play the original Mass Effect, which is what they're trying to go for with
Yeah.
Andromeda's exploration, is you'll find yourself on moons that are like, okay, this looks cool, but there's only like 1 or 2 things you can do here before you're done,
Yeah.
and you can just leave this planet. They felt like I only visited 1, and my main concern is like, okay, will other planets be as varied as this one? And I went to a very floral planet. There were plains. There was a lot of plant life. There were creatures that wanted to eviscerate me. There were geysers.
Okay.
It was a very beautiful planet.
Okay.
And I loved exploring it. There was plenty to do. There were collectibles and stuff, and none of the dumb collectibles and Inquisition, like collect some shards for some random reason. Like there was one that tied into memory stuff that you could pick up that might be fragments of another character's memories that I can't go into too specifically because that was part of the embargo. But there's actually like a tangible reward there besides like here's a random experience money reward you get for picking these things up. It's like
Okay.
narrative rewards.
Yeah.
So were you able to determine what planet you went to?
Like what do you mean?
Like, did you select this planet from a star map?
No. They booted us up there,
Mhm.
and that was the planet that was on the star map
Oh,
that we
okay.
could go to.
So you couldn't like lean over and see what other people were doing.
No,
and they
no,
were
no,
doing- Okay.
Yeah, no. This was, but it was a pretty big planet. Like they told us that we could spend all day roaming around it and find stuff to do. And from what I saw, I could believe that.
Huh.
But it was really fun. Like the Nomad, if you remember the Mako folks from the original game, it's super bouncy and a rubbery vehicle.
Yeah,
You could just
yeah.
like shoot across surfaces and it would bounce. Like absurdly, but the Nomad, the new vehicle, isn't like that. There are actually 2 settings for it. Where the first one is you just ride across plains and whatnot, but you can also go up mountains. You can also scale like hills and stuff by switching into the other gear.
Okay.
Like it, you just scale, and it's a very cool thing to do. It's just like to ride up mountains for some reason. I've really dug. There are no weapons on it, but you can run over enemies, so that's
That
pretty
is fun.
All right.
But there were random encounters that while I was walking across the surface, like pirates would drop down from jump ships, sort of like they do in Final Fantasy. Like the enemies,
weird,
like
okay.
drop down from that ship, and then you have to fight them.
Yeah.
There were tons of enemies you come across. Like I came across a giant monster. I was like, oh, I'm gonna go kill that, and it picked me up and bit me, and then smashed me into the ground instantly killed me.
Just bit your little toes off?
Yeah, it bit my head off.
Oh
more
my
like.
lord!
Not like literally. Like there wasn't like a geyser of blood, but he bit into my head and like threw me on the ground.
Wow, you should have thrown him into an explosive barrel.
Yeah, that would have
That
worked.
would have been the power to use.
Yeah.
What about, okay, please alleviate this concern for me, because we saw the opening hour as well, and it was super early in development, so it was pretty rough. But my big takeaway was like, I don't know if this has like a sense of majesty. Like I want to be in awe with going to a new galaxy, and I don't know if I quite got that from our demo, but I'm curious now in a more polished state. Does it deliver that?
The awe thing. That's
Like the first time you see the Citadel in Mass Effect 1, like jaw-dropping moment for me.
yeah. Actually, I talked with the producer, one of the producers, Mike Gamble, after that, and one of the things we talked about was reproducing that sense of awe.
Okay.
And personally, I did not have that sense. Like
Yeah.
outside of the intro when it starts, and you hear that they basically replay the main theme song.
Yeah, some nice synth
And like
in there.
I had
yeah.
that. I was like, okay, I'm getting into this. But as far as like seeing a new location and going like, okay, this is amazing, I did not see that. But I did not see any of the key parts, like whatever Andromeda's, I think it's called the Nexus,
Yeah.
is Andromeda's answer to the Citadel. I did not see that.
Okay.
So it could totally be that like I see that later in the final version and I feel that, but
yeah.
no, I didn't feel awe. I felt intrigue. Like
Yeah.
I came away feeling interested and really wanting to play this game. Like that is the strongest feeling I came away with, which, I think that's honestly the best I hope for, because we're talking about a game that's like probably 50 hours plus, maybe.
We don't really know.
Yeah, we don't really know, but like it was a small slice of a big game is my point.
Yeah.
So without having a more complete sense of how big this game is, I can't answer that question whether there's awe there or not.
Jeff Cork, scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you to boot up Mass Effect Andromeda and play it?
Right now, 5.
Why do you think that is?
Wow,
It just is not on my radar at all. Like I'm sure that once it's out and people in the office are talking about it more,
Yeah.
maybe my enthusiasm will. Like I enjoyed the original trilogy, but this is one for some reason it just has not been like, oh my god, a new trailer, I have to see this. I'm just kind of like, it's background noise right now for me.
Yeah, I was kind of that way with it too until I actually got to play it.
With
Like-
no offense to what you've been talking about.
Right.
Yeah,
to make that clear.
No. I'm not offended in the slightest.
You're not the background noise.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like 3 quelled my enthusiasm for the series. Not because like 3 was bad. I liked 3. It just kind of like wrapped everything up.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah.
like that was Mass Effect for me. Like I don't look forward to another Mass
Yeah.
Effect. Because
Yeah.
I felt like that series kind of like did what it needed to do for me.
Exactly.
Yeah, it does feel like that's another concern I have is we'll finish Andromeda and we'll be like, that was fun, but that was superfluous. That wasn't like a necessary part of the Mass Effect experience. And I talked to the producer about that during our interview. And he said, yeah, that's been one of the biggest challenges is like trying to justify this game outside of like the trilogy. Like, how do we start? Yeah, I mean, besides the money thing, like, how do we make this something that's cool and noteworthy for fans that they'll really get into and like, craft this universe outside of the trilogy.
Yeah.
Well, it seems super vague too, because they're like, it could be the beginning of a new series,
Mhm.
right? They've said that.
They're very cagey. They're like, we don't want to lock anything down yet.
They're not saying it's another 3 games. They're not saying it's another
Right.
whatever. This could be.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
it doesn't sell or something, maybe it. You think?
I mean,
Yeah,
I asked him that question too, and he said, well, we definitely want a continuation, but as far as like, is this a continuation of this universe? Is this a continuation of these character stories? And like, how does that come about? Is it, sort of like the full-fledged story DLC thing they did for Dragon Age Inquisition? He didn't really answer that. He did say that they want a continuation of some sort for Mass Effect, like outside of Andromeda, but whether, what that means,
Yeah.
who
It's
knows?
just because more and more confusing as to what they think Mass Effect is. Like for me, I thought it was clearly Shepard's story in that universe, and now it's like, is it just like being able to bone everybody on a spaceship and go on other planets? I mean, like, is that ultimately what Mass Effect is
Well,
to
I mean,
them?
I think that like Dragon Age went through sort of the same sort of growing pains. Like, first off, okay, the first game was the Warden story. The second game was like, what's their name? Hawk?
Mhm.
The Hawk story.
Yep.
Third game, the Inquisitor story. So I feel like they're sort of doing the same territory here. They're trying to figure out whose story it is.
Mhm.
Like, okay, is it Ryder's story? And then in the next game or whatever, are we going to be playing as Ryder? So, I think they're going obviously this is my interpretation. I think they're waiting to see like how people react to characters and like the writers and whatnot before they go on with their next whatever the next installment is.
Try to understand the market a little bit better if
Yeah,
they are
yeah,
going
yeah.
to shake things up a little bit more. Cool. Looking forward to it.
Mhm.
Ben Reeves, Halo Wars 2.
How's it going?
It came out on Tuesday.
It did.
I applaud Microsoft for pushing an RTS in the year 2017. They're making a lot of really creative ads, trying to be comedic. I feel like they're really giving it their all. How is the actual game?
It's good. It's good, but like I'm not enthusiastic. I mean, I don't know. It's like I feel like I should be the core audience for this too, because I'm a big RTS guy. I like the Halo franchise a fair amount. I even like the first Halo Wars.
Yeah.
And when they announced this game, I was kind of like, oh, okay. Like I just like I think I said that exactly.
I think I was at the Gamescom. I think is when they announced the game, and I was at the press conference. There was just like you could not have a better example of polite applause when it was like Halo Wars 2.
Yeah. I remember during the Game Awards, they kept showing trailers and people were like going crazy for them, like Death Stranding and stuff. And then the one for Halo Wars 2 came up and silence. Nothing.
Even like with the
No
blur
reaction.
cinematics, which are were
incredible,
great.
like Blizzard level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they're pulling all the stops on that
So
front.
it was like, not on my radar. And like, I got the game in. I'm like, oh yeah, this game I should be excited to play, but I'm not.
This is a game that exists.
Yeah, I mean, I still had a good time with it. It's relatively inoffensive, which sounds worse than it is. It
Can you
sounds
put
really
that in
bad.
blurb on the box?
I gave it a It's complicated, but I gave it a 7.75
yeah.
on the PC.
It's
And like, it is complicated because what they did is they created a good to decent RTS strategy like system and that has fairly generic mission structure and like a certain number of compromises because it all needs to be able to work on a controller. So there's a bunch of like weird sort of like things that I think are holding it back from really excelling.
Which is weird because the first one they wouldn't stop shouting from the mountains, "We have cracked the code." You remember for a while that was something that everyone was doing, like EA with the Lord of the Rings games.
Oh, sure,
and then they also had a Command and Conquer where it was like, we've adapted RTS to a control, because that was like something that people cared about at one point, which is funny to think about too.
Exactly. It's like the cure for cancer.
We've
finally done it.
I feel like that was like a nightmare scenario that people that came from like the StarCraft Nintendo 64 port. Like people hadn't recovered from that yet, so they sort of like seized up whenever the words like console RTS came
but
out.
like Halo Wars, the first one was designed specifically with that in mind too, so it seems odd that.
And I thought it worked well with Halo Wars, and it still works well here. Like it hasn't really evolved since. I think they've made a few minor tweaks, but
just evolved the combat already.
Yeah, already, come on.
Boo.
But yeah, so the game itself, like honestly, the best part I found was like the story. Was the most compelling thing for me, and like the characters in the game actually are kind of interesting, and those blur cinematics look amazing. There's a bunch of like sweet like action with the Spartan team in there and them fighting. It's this new faction called the Banished.
Where does this take place in the cool Halo timeline?
It takes place, so the first one was sort of a prequel to the Halo games. It took place earlier, but then now it's the same team, it's the same ship, Spirit of Fire. They've been in cryogenic sleep for almost 30 years.
Okay.
And so now it's kind of like brought them up to current with the franchise. So it's like running parallel with Halo 5, I believe.
Oh, interesting.
But they're not really connected to anything that's going on Earth because they're so far away from. It's kind of like Mass Effect. They're really like in another galaxy, right? And so they've encountered the Banished, which are led by this guy named Atriox, who's like this big brute.
Yeah.
He's so badass. He like tears apart this team of 3 Spartans in their first encounter. It's a really cool cinematic, like I said. And then the rest of the whole game is you managing your forces and trying to take down the Banished.
And that's you moving a cursor to make a little tiny guy.
Well, that's it. Like
incrementally.
In the video you posted, like 4 things to know about Halo Wars 2. You mentioned that StarCraft 2's sense of level design in the RTS space just moved the entire genre forward so much, and that this feels like a pre-StarCraft 2
I
design
really do.
philosophy.
I mean, StarCraft 2, I think you're with me, is
the best.
one of the best RTS.
Wings of Liberty,
probably
amazing.
the best
Yeah.
RTS of all time. And the mission design in this, it's not like every mission's exactly the same, but it does feel like, all right, this is the mission where you go destroy that base, and then this is the mission where I have to go take this point and just guard it. And it was, it's kind of like all the
classic 2.
This is what you go do on this mission.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel like the genre is like in peril? Like because I can't honestly remember like a noteworthy one since, and I used to be really into them. StarCraft 2. Like I can't think of one after StarCraft 2.
The Total War fans, even though it's a little
Wow.
more strategy.
Yeah, like that one feels.
focused.
That doesn't feel like to me. That doesn't feel like classic RTS.
Okay.
You
Yeah,
know,
things have just moved to like a 4X style.
Yeah.
games,
Right.
Or it
Clash
feels
Royale.
Like, yeah, MOBAs and stuff like that have kind of taken over that strategy itch. Right?
Yeah.
It's interesting that they didn't make this a console MOBA, and that they were bold enough to say, we're going to make this an RTS. We're getting Creative Assembly, who they do the Total War
They do
series,
Total
right?
War,
Yeah. Like, we're going to get some really talented RTS designers to take a crack at this again. And do you think it was a good strategy, or should they have gone a more abstract MOBA route?
I think they held too closely to what the first Halo Wars did.
Okay.
And I liked the first Halo Wars at the time, but you're kind of like Cork was saying, is like, all right, we cracked the code, this is it. And like Halo Wars didn't make a splash.
Yeah.
So obviously, like, they need to do something more to it, or maybe rethink the idea of even taking RTS to the console. Maybe like make it a whole new kind of campaign or whatever. Because there's the biggest thing for me is like the base building is all confined to one lot, and you can't pick
Yeah.
where you build things, and in some
Mhm.
cases you're like restricted from building certain buildings because you're out of lot space. And which kind of adds a strategy element to it, but not a good strategy element to it. You just feel like you're sacrificing, like, well, I wish I could build more of this, but I can't.
Did you guys ever play the reboot of Battlezone in 1998?
No.
Yeah, it combined like it was really weird because it was like a first-person shooter where you could drive tanks and vehicles and stuff, but there were also real-time strategy elements
Right. Okay.
included where you could build a base.
Yeah.
On the moon and stuff, and it was really fun. And I feel like that's a good compromise between, like bringing RTS to a wider audience and making it better on console that developers just haven't messed with.
Or what is, God, help me out, the Warhawk spiritual
Oh,
successor?
Starhawk.
Starhawk. Is that what it was? Where they kind of had some RTS elements in there
Yeah.
as well?
Yeah, except like third-person shooter sort of
Right.
stuff. Yeah. Like I love that design.
Yeah.
I wish there was more
That
of
is
it.
cool. Or
Yeah.
maybe you just remove the base building altogether, focus on the strategy of your units themselves or something.
Yeah, it seems like I applaud Microsoft for like trying to satiate the fan base and like that tiny group of people, relatively tiny group of people that are like, Halo Wars rule, make another one. Like they're just so eager to try and do anything with the licenses they have to try and make fans happy, except make a new Perfect Dark, of course. So I applaud them for that. It just feels bizarre. But what about in that video? You also mentioned Blitz mode.
Yeah, that's the new mode, and honestly, that is like the one area where they did think outside the box a little bit, and they did try some new things, and I think it works for the most part. It's an online multiplayer mode where you and up to 3 other guys, you're battling over
Or
these control
ladies.
points. Yeah, I don't want to judge JV, but there's these up to 3 different points you're trying to control. But the way you deploy your units is through cards. So you have like a deck of cards.
Oh,
and
weird.
you draw a hand, and then once you have enough points, you can deploy them onto the field, and you can deploy them anywhere on the field.
This sounds very modern. Does it sound fun?
Yeah, I thought it was actually cool. Like, it's
Huh.
a new way to do it, so you don't have to worry about base building for the most. I mean, you're still trying to collect resources so you can spawn new guys, but those kind of randomly deploy onto the battlefield, and you're slowly earning them yourselves. Like, I just like that card mechanic, that random element to it. You get new card packs, and you can unlock and fix your deck.
It's got to be connected to like the rec system from Halo 5, right?
It does remind me of that. I don't feel as quite as sinister, although you
Okay.
can buy packs separately. Yeah, so
All
there is
right.
that element to it, but I earned a good amount of cards on my own without buying anything.
So overall, who would you recommend Halo Wars to?
It's tough. Like, I think if you really like the first Halo Wars, you'll probably dig this.
Yeah.
I think it's still fun. If you're like a hardcore PC RTS player, I don't know, like you might get turned off by this. I think if you're just a huge Halo nut, you might kind of dig this for the Halo. I think, like I said, the story is
Okay.
really interesting. The lore they've built on is cool.
If
Wow.
you work at a magazine and you're assigned to write about it,
You know, there's that. So if you work at Game Informer, your name's
All right.
Ben. I would say if you like strategy and you're predominantly a console player,
Yeah.
check it out.
There we go. Done deal.
Okay.
Jeff Cork, when are you going to get your turn at the dance?
fresh.
Let's
You're
talk
supposed to take
about.
my hand.
Oh
Come
yeah,
on.
Psychonauts: Rhombus of Ruin,
Yes,
the VR experience exclusive to PSVR, at least for right now.
it's true.
It came out on Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
What a weird thing. So it's a little side story that takes place between Psychonauts 1 and
Yes.
the now in development Psychonauts 2.
Correct.
What did you think of this? You just finished it today.
Yeah, you kind of. I'm not gonna lie. I haven't spent a lot of time like coalescing my thoughts too.
Okay.
So we're just doing it freestyle.
Really puts the raw in Rhombus.
How long did it take you?
Hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe.
Okay.
So it's a pretty quick thing.
Mhm.
You messed around with it too, right?
Yeah, I'm curious where I was. I just did like a train car puzzle where I was looking overhead and sliding luggage.
Oh,
That's
boy.
where I got to.
Yeah.
I just past that, and
Okay.
then well, go on. I'll
So
explain.
let's pull back real quick. then.
Please.
The setup is that you are on the Psychonauts team now, having finished the events of Psychonauts 1, like you just
There we
said.
go.
So you're playing as Raz, and you're on the plane with Sasha and Mia and Raz's little girlfriend. I can't remember her name right now.
Lily.
Lily, of course, the unforgettable Lily. And you're on your first real mission to rescue Lily's father, who's been abducted.
Yeah.
So then you're going to the Rhombus of Ruin, you find out, which is kind of like the Bermuda Triangle of the Psychonauts universe. So that explains the title. That was a huge weight off my shoulders as soon as they got rid of that, because I was like, I don't know what this refers to. The Rhombus of Ruin is some nerd geometry stuff. But anyway, and then basically what happens is you get to play around with your powers. You've got like telekinesis, pyrokinesis, jump into people's brains a little bit.
And it relies heavily on that because you are never moving. You're
'Cause it's
Raz strapped down in a
exactly.
chair, and then you just look at who you want to jump to and then
Yep.
teleport from their vantage point. And a lot of the game is kind of like leapfrogging through perspectives just
Yes.
to navigate a space.
Because what happens is the plane crashes, and then your team is separated. So you're trying to save everyone on your team and then rescue Lily's father.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like, everyone happens to have been scattered independently too, to make it a little more interesting. So like you said, you kind of leapfrog from creature to creature, the places underwater. So it's a lot of fish.
It's a lot of
So
looking
like
at
swim
fish.
in a position, you jump into that fish, and then you kind of look, and then like another fish will come by, and then you're like, okay, I guess this is my next grappling point.
And there's a good
essentially.
joke where, you're Raz, so it's all brain folks, the Psychonauts,
Yeah.
and you're jumping around, and some of the fish are jellyfish.
Mhm.
And then Raz is like, yeah, I thought jellyfish didn't have brains, but I guess this is one of the smart ones. I don't know.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, and as you get each person, they will like imbue you, because you lose a lot of your abilities because there's some
They Metroid.
story reasons. Exactly. And you get your abilities back one by one, and then it all culminates in like a big.
Okay, you haven't coalesced your thoughts fully, but what do you think of that experience?
I think it's interesting. It's a weird one to evaluate, just because I think Job Simulator really spoiled me in a lot of
100%.
ways.
Yes.
Because what that game did, Job Simulator, is that you're very small, confined area, but it's like a playground where if you see something, you can interact with it and do like interesting things. And I think that
Rec Room as well, right?
Rec Room as well, exactly. This is kind of a weird intermediate step where your interactivity is very limited to certain things, and it seems like this is I don't know what it seems like this is a type of game, and like Double Fine would have put more stuff in there and more Easter egg kind of goofing around type activities. You know what I mean? Like
You expect them to.
I expect them to, and it was a little disappointed that it's kind of like there's not a whole lot of stuff you can do that isn't prescribed. So you're shooting your psi blast at things, and there's some doors that'll open, for instance. But beyond very superficial levels of interactivity, it's pretty much like you're just along for the ride, moving from grappling hook to grappling hook. It's like an
Yes.
amusement park ride in a lot of ways.
I was watching a developer vid doc
Mhm.
on this like just yesterday, and like
Yeah.
I had not been paying attention to this game at all, but I was a big fan of like the first one.
Yeah.
So I was kind of thinking like, oh, it's gonna be some platformer or something, but no, they compared it to a point and click adventure game. Which
I think
thought
that's
was weird.
very
Yes.
apt in all the pros and cons
Mhm.
of the old point and click adventure genre, because it is a lot of looking around, hearing characters say the same line of dialogue
Mhm.
again and again as you try and figure out like, okay, what is the dumb pixel hunting thing that I have to
Oh.
try
Right.
and find? That makes it sound worse than it is, JV. It's
Mhm.
just, I don't know if that is necessarily fun in VR. I'm totally with you, where in the beginning, when you're on the plane, you have all your abilities, and you're just like tearing everything up, chucking stuff around with your psi abilities and whatnot, telekinesis. It's like, this is fun. I understand that you can't make an extended VR experience. It's just, hey, have fun,
Go
be
crazy,
an idiot,
yeah.
throw things around. But I think from VR, that's all I want at this
Yeah.
point. So like, hey, time to focus. Now let's gate this and make it a very sequential puzzle of do this, then you can do this, move this
Mhm.
guy out of the way so you can see this.
Because with few
don't think that's
exceptions,
fun.
yeah, like moving from fish to fish to fish is just like, it becomes tedious. You're not seeing things that are interesting between
Yeah.
along that journey, where it's like, I would have if I could have just teleported to the next location, they could have saved themselves a lot of effort,
Yeah.
and it wouldn't have lost much in the process.
I hear you. And you say nothing interesting. I mean, we should point out, I think it's really fun
Mm-hmm.
to go back to the Psychonauts universe. You forget how much you
Oh my
missed
god,
that.
absolutely.
Especially like seeing the characters all around you again, and even just seeing the UI and just the abstract, wonky art design.
Mhm.
Like, I think there is a thrill in looking around just on the art of the environment and seeing these
yes,
characters
interacting
up
with the characters
close.
for sure. But like being underwater and looking around, you're like, okay, there's a pile of cars, there's some
Right.
plants. I mean, that isn't as interesting as seeing those characters again, for sure.
Yeah, and they do some interesting stuff. I don't know if it gets more abstract later on, but at least not too far in. Without spoiling anything, you warp and see the world from some very small things perspectives,
Mm-hmm.
which is the most interesting thing visually, especially when then classic Psychonauts characters are interacting with you when you're this tiny small thing.
Yes.
Which
It's
just
like a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids kind of a thing.
it's exactly like that. Where's my Honey I Shrunk the Kids VR
Yeah.
experience?
Yeah.
Also, really bizarre side note. I was listening to the PlayStation blogcast, and Tim Schafer's being interviewed on that. And they were talking about it with the project lead as well. And they explained that a trick, because normally with like 2D games, if you want to call it that, I know
Let's
it's
call it that.
TV screen games, normally you can play with like a field of view
Mm-hmm.
to change if you're going to a large creature or a small creature. You can make it more fish-eyed and whatnot. And they found that in VR, what you actually do is you move the alignment of where your eyes should be in the VR headset. I don't think physically, but somehow software-wise, and that's a trick to make you feel as if you're a small thing looking at a big world.
Oh, weird.
I cannot wrap my mind around exactly how this works, but
Yeah.
that was one of the little quirks they
Well, I can
said
say
learning
that
about VR.
If that's what they are doing, it works because there are times where you're a little guy and you're looking at big stuff, and it's pretty cool.
That's
Which
like
is-
one of your favorite things.
It is absolutely one of my favorite things. Funny you
These
should
are
mention
some
that.
of my favorites.
It's fun to see Psychonauts characters. It's a weird novelty.
It's fun to see. There's a lot of like cool callbacks to the Psychonauts. Also,
Yeah.
like you see some emotional baggage, and it's cool to see those like models for things that, you know, if you played Psychonauts, it's just really neat. Like the really flat, like stylized imagery too. Like
Yeah.
like you'd see I think emotional baggage was drawn in that style
Right,
too. But there's
right.
like some character art that's like that in loadings in the introduction. Yeah, it's visually really neat.
Also, speaking of introduction,
Really clever puzzles too.
Oh, you think so? Okay,
Like later on, the thing where you're sliding the boxes around was not fun.
yeah, or even like the eel one. It's like, okay, this is a fine.
It was
little
fun the
puzzle.
first time.
Sure, exactly.
Yeah.
But you talk about cool things visually. They do a full old school Bond intro,
Yes.
which
Oh,
is really
really?
fun to see
Oh,
in
that's
VR.
fun.
Like being in the middle of that, I feel like they really knocked that out of the park.
Yeah.
Yeah. So later on, the puzzles get more creative.
Yeah. There's some interesting stuff,
Okay.
but at the same time, it's not. I think I'll do this for Dan Tack. It's fine because I know he loves that kind of critique.
yeah,
It's one of those things that like if you have a PSVR in your possession
yeah.
and you absolutely need stuff to play. I know
Mm-hmm.
because there's not a lot of stuff coming on for it. You should. It's absolutely worth the $20.
There's
It's $20.
Yeah.
It's $20. There's a weird point of comparison, Cork, and I'm curious what you think of this. So in Broken Age, Shay,
Yes.
who is the Elijah Wood character, he's on a
Mhm.
spaceship. JV, did you play Broken Age?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Broken Age.
You remember in the beginning when it was just made clear that he was bored and he was too adult for this stuff. He's sick of these toys and being treated like a child, all this stuff. And he had like a little toy
Yeah.
thing on the dash, and you could like play with the buttons that
buttons?
weren't really doing anything.
Yep.
Those are literally in this game.
Yes, they
as a
are.
way to like, hey, isn't this fun? And I felt like for a lot of it, I was having the same reaction that Shay did in Broken Age. Where it's
Yeah.
like, sure, I can flick this stuff. It's okay.
Yeah, this isn't any more fun. For
Were
the
they
first person.
recognizing that?
No. It's just a
Commentary?
weird analogy that I thought of like, hey,
Okay.
wait a minute. This was in Broken Age as well. And it was a point of, hey, isn't this lame?
Yeah.
But now in VR, there is something kind of fun. But I'm with you. I maybe was expecting more.
Mhm. Like,
wackiness.
optimally, what the perfect situation here is that one of your friends has bought the PSVR
Ah, yeah.
and they are a huge Psychonaut fan, and you are as well, and you convince them to spend the money on it.
There
And
you
you
go.
just go over to their house, leech off of them for a couple hours, and then go home with these precious memories.
For sure. I think
Having
it's going to
not
be a
spent a
fun
dime.
novelty moving forward for Psychonauts fans to be like, oh, did you ever play Rhombus or Ruin? You got to check that out.
Yeah, because
This
there's
is-
not like a whole lot of. I mean, there's a little bit of stuff that's interesting, like lore-wise, if you want
Yeah.
to get into that. Some insight on like one character in particular, but it's not like an essential like, oh, this explains
Yeah.
that.
There's
Oh,
a-
that's what I was going to say. I was like, it's hard to tell because Psychonauts 2 isn't out yet, but like, do you get the sense that this is required reading in any way, or this is not?
I can't imagine it'd be built that way. I mean, without the plot of Psychonauts 2, it's tough, but it's just fun to revisit those characters. It's
It seems like a side
Mhm.
story.
yeah.
It seems like a holiday special or something.
Yeah,
for like
that's probably a good way to put
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of Razvio.
Yeah.
He is talking in your ears throughout a lot of that experience.
Yeah, and something that like really bums me out is in this one is that your character is sitting down. Most of the characters that you're interacting with are standing, I guess, but like you'll see someone who's like holding a clipboard and you're like, "Oh, I wonder if I go into this person's perspective." Like in one early example, you do get to see what they're reading, but
Yeah.
the rest of the time, if someone is holding a prop, it just disappears when you jump into them.
Yeah.
They don't have a body. If you're Raz sitting in a chair and it's like very clear that he is sitting in a chair because he can't escape, you look and you don't have arms. I just like little things like that. I like having a physical body in VR.
Yeah, it's a real perk. in
Looking
life.
down and just seeing like the seat of the chair just kind of strikes me as weird.
That is
Yeah.
weird.
I
I
want to
can
see
see
my weird little spindly knobby kneed legs.
Yeah.
There's some good jokes in it. Believe it or not, Double Fine game written by Tim Schafer.
Yeah,
It's
go
probably
figure.
going to make you laugh.
There you go.
I laughed out loud at a very unexpected moment where Lily, you can see from the outside perspective, and
Mhm.
Lily is trying to get through this train car door.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like, I think it's a dresser on the other side
Yes.
that's blocking it, and she doesn't know what it is. And she goes, "What's on the other side of this door? Moose?" And that was the one time that I laughed out loud. playing this game.
Okay.
But
All
there's
right.
some other good jokes along the way. I only made it through. I didn't finish Psychonauts the original because it made me sick when I got to the Milkman stage. I get nauseous really easily.
Oh, and
I
that
was
weird rounded.
Yep, I'm like, I'm out. I
Yep.
can't do it. This game, I had to stop after that Lily section because I also got nauseous again. And maybe it's just a weird calibration issue with
Mhm.
PSVR, but the camera started like jittering around.
Were
in
you
a
standing
way.
up or were you seated?
I was seated.
Okay.
Did you have that issue?
I didn't
at
have
all?
any issues.
Okay.
I've had that with PSVR in general. Like every once in a while, it just seems like the world is being shook, like from like on its axis or something,
And
where
it just
everything just
destroys
freaks out.
you.
Yeah,
Oh, it's rough. But all right, so a fun novelty for Psychonauts fans. That's the takeaway.
for sure.
Cool. I really want to talk about Night in the Woods. Elise is reviewing it. She was not able to be on this podcast, sadly.
Oh, no.
But hey, you guys should check out Night in the Woods. It came out on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Do you remember the old game Aquaria? I call it an early indie game. It's like 2009. But anyways, Alec worked on that. Is making this game, but definitely looking at Night in the Woods if you're a fan of Oxenfree.
Okay.
It's just story based, not really puzzly adventure. And I was playing it and I was thinking, God, this feels so much like some other piece of media, and I can't put my finger on it. Eventually, I realized not the action sequences, but it feels like Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Really?
In like the interacting with other people from high school. Like the whole premise is you're a college student that dropped out of college mysteriously and you went back to your hometown, and just like the run-of-the-mill stuff of talking to other characters around that world, it really embraces kind of just the quirky social dynamics of
So is
being
it-
a 20-year-old.
So is it like millennial slacker humor? Like
A little bit of that,
Okay.
yeah. Also, everyone's animals, I should point out. So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
play this female cat, and you're running around, and it's a very abstract world. So it's Scott Pilgrim versus the World meets Mouse, if you're going the graphic novel route.
Wow. All
Not
right,
not that dark, not that dark.
Well,
as
okay,
Mouse.
that's a thing.
But there
Alright.
are definitely there's a strong hint that it's kind of a sad story. It's going to be embracing a lot of emotions, but I believe Elise is digging it, and I really recommend people check it out. And I want to talk about it more maybe
Is
on
it
next week's episode.
episodic?
No,
no. It's
That's all
it's
standalone.
contained.
it's on
Okay.
Steam and PS4 and whatnot. So
PS4.
hopefully next week we'll talk more about it. But for right now, do you guys want to move on to emails?
I
Yeah.
would love that.
Let's
game.
do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's do it right now.
Let's do it.
Let's go.
And welcome back to the Game Informer Show. We got some great emails from the community. People sent in their wonderful emails to podcast@gameinformer.com. We welcome feedback, comments, words of wisdom, news stories you want our hot take on, everything there. So podcast@gameinformer.com. Again, I am overwhelmed by the amount of great emails that are sent in. So don't be insulted if I don't read yours, and don't be insulted if we don't pick yours as a question of the week. Because every week we read through all the emails, we choose our absolute favorite one, the
always
one
a tough
that
call.
cannot be topped. It's a tough call, but it's always definitive as can be. There's no wishy-washiness.
Mm-mm.
Oh yeah, I mean it's always the right call.
It is
Right.
science.
Yeah.
And then we ship that person out something really nice.
It'll be Cork's hat this time.
It will be Cork's hat
Or JV's
You're gonna have to
bangs.
eat it.
or JV's face.
Bangs.
Banks, before we
Wow.
get to the first email here, I've had a lot of feedback about people saying, "What's up with Game Club? When is Game Club coming back? What's going on with this?"
Is it ever going to come back?
Yeah, I think I mentioned it to Joe Juba the other day, and he goes, "Oh, we still do those?" Joe here. So yes, we still plan on doing them. The next one I think we're gonna do is coming up towards the end of March. Let's do Mass Effect Andromeda.
Space Smut.
Yeah, let's dive right into that.
Was
space
Joe
smut face
excited
first?
for this?
A little bit.
Okay.
As
Yeah.
excited as Joe gets about
Is
things.
this going to be
Yeah.
the one he finally sticks through the whole way?
Oh, he's been good. He's been
Yeah?
good sometimes.
Okay.
But Mass Effect Andromeda, I think there's going to be a lot to work through based on JV's red hot preview.
Mhm.
JV, will you join us for this adventure?
I will definitely be on there. Yeah.
Awesome.
Could have
Elise
one
and I are
episode?
probably just going to argue about Thane the entire time.
Oh boy.
So that'll be the whole game club.
Doesn't even relate to Andromeda.
He's not even in there.
It doesn't
we can
matter.
have whole one episode is just about who you romanced.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean we got to talk about who we do the dirty with.
Yeah.
Absolutely, in space.
So once we have, reviewed it, we have the review copy in here, whoever reviews it, that person will have a better idea of how to break it up and, when we're doing what date, how far you have to play into, how do we not spoil things for you. So we'll have a better idea about exact timing, but soon after Mass Effect Andromeda comes out, in theory, it'll be the first episode.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's going to be fun, you guys.
Start
Yeah.
playing it.
Heck yeah. Yeah, start playing it right now.
It's
We
up to
recommend
a
it everybody.
6. My anticipation for
Oh.
Mass Effect Andromeda, he bumped it up one.
All right. Well, how's your
Wow.
anticipation of an email from Luke Ingram from Benton, Arkansas?
I'll listen to this.
All right. He says, "Hello, GI Podcast crew. Recently, your coverage of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild has me becoming more and more excited for its release. I'm up to an 8, he says. It also seems to be bringing back, for me at least, a sense of childlike wonder that I haven't experienced in games since Ocarina of Time. Are there any games in any of your recent memories that have reinstilled that same sense of childlike wonder as you had when you were younger?" Just a surface level note, I've noticed Reeves, we haven't unveiled it yet, but we've been talking to a lot of random people on the street, possibly about the Nintendo Switch and
Possibly.
Legend of Zelda. It seems like a lot of people have that take where there's a surprising amount of random people on the street excited about this game just for the sense of exploration.
Yeah.
It's surprising.
Talked to a few people who were like big fans of Zelda in the past and haven't played one in like the last 15 years, but they're like, but this one maybe. You're like, really? They're like, but what's the chance really that you're going to play it?
I think they're just trying to be nice to you because you're so handsome.
So I don't know if this counts as childlike wonder,
Yeah.
but I'm starting to think it doesn't. But I'm going to still go anyway. Whenever a new Smash Brothers game
Oh.
is on the horizon, I get so giddy with the announcements of the new characters and just anticipating what kind of stupid crap Nintendo has up its sleeves and how much I'm gonna love it. And I just love that. And I love looking at the roster when it's all done and just seeing like, oh my god, I can be all these different guys.
I'm still excited about Smash 4's roster. I think it's just stupid. You can have Ryu fight Cloud Strife.
Yeah.
Just
Yes.
amazing.
Every time, I think that to quantify it, every time one of those the screen pops up and there's a new challenger, you've got to every time that pops up, I get so excited because I try to avoid spoilers if I can
God, I
with
hope
that kind of thing.
I hope they port Smash 4 to the Switch and add 1 or 2 more characters.
Yes.
Just don't let that ride be over. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
What a game. I have it with, I think the last time I was really struck by this, I think we've kind of hinted at it earlier in this podcast, but Rec Room in VR.
That was so much fun.
It's stupid, but it does get you back to oh yeah, it's just fun to basically be in a literal sandbox where I can just pick up things, chuck things, interact with people, be as silly as possible.
throw darts at people and not get yelled at.
Yeah, normally when people say sandbox in a video game, it just means you can chuck a grenade at somebody in a funky way and they have patrol routes. But this just free form interacting with other people and playing around and being silly and moving around a space in full
Yes,
room scale VR. Just it's a real sense of wonder.
It is. I'm really glad you made me do that.
I would say kind of like this guy really excited for the game's not out yet, but like Super Mario Odyssey, I'm really looking forward
really?
to that one. Like the fact that he's going to a real world now or something that simulates real world future city,
Yeah,
that looks cool to me, and I'm
Mhm.
excited to play it.
for that storyline.
That's right. The other one I was gonna mention was Pikmin. I feel like that's maybe too old, but the first
that
time I
the
played that
Oh yeah.
was awesome. I was like, this is a game totally unique from anything else I've played,
Mm-hmm.
and I love just exploring that world and figuring
This
out
is how a
things work.
console RTS should be done.
Well, honestly, kind of, yeah.
Probably Undertale.
Oh,
I think.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, because that got me back to Pokemon. Oh, sort of those JRPGs that I actually played.
Okay.
You know, sort of the more general ones. So yeah.
Also, people don't give Undertale enough credit for how tight of an experience it is too. It's
so
so
good.
nice. It's exactly as long as it should be. Yeah,
Mm.
that's a great one. Jason from Salem, Oregon. He might be a witch. Look out. He says, hey, Ben and crew. So I was looking at a recent article on the website that Kumail Nanjiani was going to be voicing one of the characters in the new Mass Effect game. I usually don't like it when famous people are voice actors in games. I find that I have trouble separating the actor from the character. Do you find them distracting or are you able to separate them from the character? Thanks for the hard work. Thanks,
Only when
Jason.
it's Kumail Nanjiani.
Dear friend of the show.
Yeah,
He was on Castlevania 4,
Yeah.
or just regular replay years ago.
He has such a recognizable voice, though. Like I love that guy and like think he's hilarious, but he is very recognizable. He's like one of the new Lego
he's in one of the
movies. I'm
Ninjago
like,
dudes.
like, oh, I know
Yeah.
exactly who that is. And I have trouble because I always like picture that person whenever they're talking. Like Rosario Dawson was in the Lego Batman movie.
Yeah.
And like all I could think of was her every time she opened her mouth.
But that's all you ever think of.
That's true. I mean, you could think of worse people too, but
I mean, I think there are ways to pull it off. Like Dishonored pulls off like all its ridiculous celebrity voices pretty well. Like Sam Rockwell, Rosario Dawson. Who
Zachary Quinto.
else- Wait, is he in
Yeah.
Dishonored?
All the best.
No, really?
So why does that?
I don't believe you. Who is he?
Can look it up online.
No.
All right.
So what's the secret? How do they pull it off? But other people, it's distracting.
I think the
when they're in
biggest
there.
thing is like you pit that against something like Call of Duty, where they make whoever the famous person like Kevin Spacey or Kit Harington look
Sure.
exactly like the actor, and it's like, come
Yeah.
on, and they're basically playing another version of a character they played. Like Kevin Spacey, he's playing Frank Underwood in that
Oh,
Call of Duty
yeah.
game.
That's why
it's
he was
just
recruited.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will say, when you look exactly like you do in real life, like it's less distracting for me when it was Kid Ellington, because I'm like, well, it looks exactly like him, so I know it's him. I don't know. That's less distracting for me than when it's like totally looks like somebody else, and yet I hear this person's voice coming out of their mouth.
yeah. Going back to Dishonored, actually, there was one role that was really bad. It was
Rosario Dawson.
no, the other
Stop
guy.
thinking about
Who
it.
was the Kingpin in Netflix?
Oh,
Vincent?
that name, D'Onofrio.
Yeah. He plays a character in Dishonored 2 who's basically the Kingpin, and it sounds exactly like him and is doing the same thing. And it's like, well,
Sure.
I'm seeing your face right now.
And there is that level. I feel like you can feel it when, video game companies, they'll hire an actor to bring something new to a performance versus like, we just really like this other thing, and now we want to hang out with this actor.
I find that
Yeah.
like we talked about it when we the Condemned replay not long ago, but Bethesda had a couple of them back to back with Patrick Stewart, the beginning of Oblivion,
Yeah.
and then Liam Neeson playing your dad and Fallout
Oh,
3.
sure. Yeah.
Where just like you bring these figures in and just say like, "Hi, I'm Liam Neeson," and then just like,
Yeah, they're in there for like what, 20 minutes total?
yeah,
Like each.
exactly. It's just so they can like on the pre-release coverage go like, "Hey, we got this guy."
Yeah.
Well,
You
what is
might
that
know
one
him.
Bethesda game, the Goat F? Sniper.
What?
Code F.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mickey
I know what you're-
Rourke.
Yeah,
Yes.
Mickey Rourke. What was that game called?
Rogue Agent? Rogue
yeah.
something?
Rogue
Warrior.
There we go.
Hey.
should have Matt Miller come in and talk about Rogue Warrior sometime.
I think he might have done that on the podcast actually at some point. Anyways, great question. So, here you go, JB.
Oh, all right.
Doug from Fort Collins says, I've been playing some Dragon Age Inquisition lately and noticed that I've
I'm so
started.
sorry.
Come on. Game of the year. That I've started to think about my real life conversations having a dialogue wheel with a few options that would affect the person differently. Have you all played a game where it changes how you interact with the world? For instance, after playing Assassin's Creed, I'm constantly looking at buildings for footholds to see if I could scale it.
Tony Hawk. Is the
Oh,
clear-
really?
Every time I would see a railing for like weeks after like I was really into Tony Hawk,
Yeah.
I thought mistakenly I could do those things.
Every time you heard a Goldfinger song, you just start running and
Yeah, exactly.
That's great.
Superman, huh? I'll show you.
I had it with around that same era with GTA 3.
Yeah.
That game was. Remember how mind blowing that was?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We played so much of it that I remember being on the sidewalk and there's a car that was like slowing down next to me, and I remember thinking in my mind, that car's like going slow enough, I could press triangle right now and get into it and drive away. And people say,
I had the
GTA
same
didn't
thing.
affect people in real
Yeah.
world, but come on,
Oh,
everyone
no,
was
I
hijacking
totally
cars.
did, yeah. I had one where Sonic the Hedgehog, I think it was
All right.
3.
Did you paint yourself blue?
Yeah, I blew myself.
Uh-huh.
And there was that like tunnel where you like run and get the rings. You know what I'm talking about? The
Yeah,
special
yeah, yeah.
stage. I had played that game up all night, and like I was super tired, and so my dad was driving me to school or something. But I was like halfway sleeping, and like just seeing rings in front of me, like we were grabbing rings.
Were you reaching out for them?
And I was reaching out for them. And
Uh-huh.
he said, "Stop touching me."
How's your dad now?
Well, I don't want to talk about
Okay.
He's fine.
I think like I played Resident Evil in games that had like tank controls when I was younger. So
Yeah.
a thing that I would do when I was much younger is like I'd turn like that, like a little bit at a time.
I feel like you still do
segments.
that when you come over to our desk and ask something. When you leave, you just do a quick 180.
Mm-hmm.
It's
No, but like I'm not saying like a 180, like that whole like
right, slow
Yeah.
degrees turning.
yeah.
That's a really good look. You should keep
Mhm.
that going.
Yeah.
You should wear a cape.
Bethlehem. Oh, I'm sorry, Tim.
Tim
from
Bethlehem.
Bethlehem.
Bethlehem from Tim.
Yeah, Tim from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania says, "Hey, GI crew,
My,
my girlfriend has recently gotten into playing games more. However, she's struggled so far with aiming and shooting. It's been entertaining to watch as she sneaks through all the levels in Watch Dogs 2 and is progressing through Headlander by only pulling enemies' heads off.
Huh.
What would you recommend as a good beginner shooter for people new to the mechanic?"
Honestly, Portal. It's not totally a shooter,
Oh.
but it is using that mechanic, and you can like take as much, for the most part, take as much time as you need to kind of aim your shot. It's
Except
more about
for-
solving the puzzles.
Yeah,
right?
there is one action puzzle
there's
towards the end of
one.
Portal 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one.
Super hot.
I wrote that down, JV. It's slow motion.
Mm.
You literally, it all depends on the choices you make in slow
Yeah.
motion.
And it teaches you like the importance of trajectories and angles and stuff. It's basically like a really cool tutorial for first-person shooters.
Yeah. Also, Overwatch.
Mhm.
I understand, it'd be tough to go to Tracer, McCree, but there certainly are those characters
Like
that'll
Soldier 76.
or even Farah. Like, there's characters you can kind of slowly step into that process.
well, actually, I think you're. I was initially doing that
Initially.
way, but I think Plants vs Zombies: Garden Warfare 2,
Oh,
because third person, it pulls the action back a little bit, so you have a better like awareness of your surroundings.
Yeah.
You can play split screen co-op.
Mm.
It's really funny, and the targeting is fairly generous.
Yeah.
And it is fun as hell.
That's a good one.
There you go.
So someone under the secret code name Hell's Fury wrote in with a very appropriate question based on that name. They say, "So I'm playing Phantom Pain, and because I've already seen a playthrough of this mission by the Rad Brad on YouTube, we all know him. He's rad.
He's cool.
I know that I'm going to have to fight the man on fire.
Mm.
I sneak my way into this abandoned village. I have my dog with me. I'm armed to the teeth. Not to mention I'm Big Boss."
In D-Dog.
Exactly. So why is it that I'm so nervous to fight the man on fire, or any other big bad guys in the Metal Gear series? My question is, what makes a big boss fight so compelling? Why are some encounters terrifying and exhilarating while others seem completely lackluster? And why is Metal Gear Solid so good at it? Thanks, love the show. P.S. Fries are dipped in ketchup, not drizzled. Correct. This could be a number of different ways, but what makes a
Never put ketchup on
stressful boss, even if it's not necessarily a challenging one, like the man on fire fight, isn't that tough in
But he's on
Phantom Pain.
fire, and he has bullets all over him.
So it's the presentation
I
alone.
think that helps.
he just looks cool.
I think it's
Kind of
about
part of it, right?
upending our expectations, especially with
Mm.
Metal Gear. Like, all those boss fights, well, most of them, there are, for example, the one that always gets me, it's not even my favorite fight in the series, is The End. Like,
Yeah.
just how many ways there are to defeat that boss and,
Yeah.
like, how much of a badass he is, even though he's an old dude. I think my favorite thing is you can kill him before you fight him. Like, you can find him, like, 3 hours early or put a
Yeah.
bullet in his head and you can skip that fight
Or you can
entirely.
also set your clock ahead so he dies.
Yeah,
again.
so he dies.
I think that's fun.
Yeah, but it's just stuff like that. It's just like, okay, how can we make this super interesting? And Metal Gear, whatever criticisms like people might have for that series, like how wacky it is or whatever, like the boss fights are almost always interesting.
And I
Like
think
that
it's
fat guy on rollerblades
Yep.
with the bombs.
memorable.
Very interesting.
I think a key to Metal Gear and what it gets really right as well compared to like Titanfall 2, which I just replayed. And as much as I love that campaign, every boss just feels like, who is it? Richter, who is this guy? All right, shooting you. Okay, I guess you're dead. Moving on. I feel like Metal Gear does it the best foreplay with bosses, where they tease it throughout the story leading up to it. So like you've seen the Man on Fire. You've ran away from the Man on Fire
Yeah.
before.
Uh-huh.
So by the time this boss fight that he's talking about comes around, it is very much like okay, now it's on. Obviously, music helps. Having a lot of style helps. But just that amount of teasing it throughout the story before you get the big climax.
That is a
You're
great
exactly
point.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
seeing it ahead of time, seeing what they're capable of
Yeah,
doing,
like-
how
Yeah.
they can cause damage.
The first Mass Effect actually did that really well too with Saren. I feel
100%.
like. Yeah,
Mhm.
that is a good point about teasing.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the end boss of Mass Effect 2. Thank God you don't see
Um,
that earlier.
Wait, let's not talk about that. That didn't happen.
All right, you're right. Taylor from Macedonia, Ohio. Macedonians, who I played in Age of Empires 1. Anyways, hey, GI Crew. So growing up, I was always terrified of King Hippo from Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. I think that's racist. Anytime my brother or dad got to him, I would have to run out of the room and sit downstairs until they were done. I know it's silly to be scared of a non-scary game, but it made me wonder, what game did you play or see growing up that wasn't supposed to be scary but really freaked you out?
Was it the band-aids over his navel?
Yeah, who puts Band-Aids on their navel?
What is scary about King Hippo?
That is weird.
He's-
Because he
he's-
was kind of purple, right?
He's
Wasn't he purple?
weird looking. No, I think he's kind of like yellowish skin, golden, something like that.
I don't know. He's got a different color.
Yeah, he's got a freaky face. One that stands out to me is Myst. When I first played Myst, like having the brothers scream at you through static through the book, like not a scary game by any means, but just like someone trying to desperately convey a message and screaming at you and it coming out of my tinny PC speakers,
Yeah.
scared the crap out of me.
I wasn't like a kid. I think I was like, when did this game come out? Maybe I was 14 or so. The Third Thief, Dark Shadows. There's this level
okay.
called The Cradle,
Mm-hmm.
where it's not really like, that's not a horror game. And maybe you could argue that it's a horror level, much in the same way like the haunted house from Vampire Bloodlines is a haunted sort of scary
We were
level.
all thinking it, yeah.
But it's spooky and unnerving because it's just very tense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one that freaked me out the most.
I think it was the first Star Fox. Fight on Andros at the end.
Oh,
Okay.
the big face.
Doesn't he have kind of a laugh? Or something?
Oh, jeez, don't do
Can you-
that.
Whoa!
You gotta give us a heads up when you give us
Can
that
we-
scary of a laugh.
Can we have that as like a permanent clip on our soundboard from
On
now
the
on?
GI Show soundboard.
Wade,
Yeah,
make
yeah.
it happen.
Yeah.
Similarly, Super Smash Brothers, I think it was Brawl, where you fight the hands at the end.
Yeah.
Oh
Those guys, they're not really creepy, but they're hands, right? So, but they're detached from everything else. And,
melee,
like something about that freaked me out a little bit, and I was playing it late at night, which probably helped.
And you haven't worn gloves since.
I refuse to. And Mickey Mouse terrifies me.
One stupid one, and I think it was just because it would unexpectedly come in so loud and so hot, and this is going back, but Ghostbusters 2 for the Apple II, I think it was Ghostbusters 2, that game had a voice sample when you booted it up, and it was so crappy. It sounded a little something like this.
No, thank you.
Listen to this music sample that they got. That's music, ladies and gentlemen, not some sort of fly killer.
This is supposed to be music? I
Hang
thought
on,
this
wait.
was like the car driving.
No, this is. Listen. This was really cool.
What was this
Back
for?
in the day, Apple II. Yeah. You got any of that old school stuff, Cork, that stands out?
Well, if Wade would indulge me, we didn't prep this ahead of time. The Alex Kidd, The Lost Stars, has two terrifyingly terrible sound effects. There's one before mission starts, and then when poor Alex takes damage, he also has a blood-curdling scream.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I got another one. Did you ever play that old skiing game where you're just going down the slope?
Ski free.
Yeah, and the Yeti will come
Yeah.
and just
Oh,
devour
that's a
you.
great one.
Yeah, because that game's like meant to be comical, but it was like super freaky to watch your
Yeah.
guy get eaten.
It's Sinistar-esque. It's just
Yeah.
diabolical.
Blood
Yeah,
and
for
gore.
sure.
The first Gran Turismo, like when you come around the lap and you jump out of the closet and scare your brother, he lets out a really terrifying scream.
Huh.
Wade, do you have that on file?
Anyways, we got a couple of questions which weirdly are themed. Jordan from Minneapolis says, hello to Ben and GI Crew. I've been following Game Informer consistently for 5 or 6 years, and in that time it's become very clear that a lot of editors are big Star Wars fans. However, I'm curious if there's anyone at GI who prefers Star Trek, a.k.a. the wrong opinion, he says.
prefers.
Does anybody take Star
Dan
Trek?
Tack, yeah.
I maybe tag would.
No.
No? Okay, correct.
Like if that was like a Battlestar, maybe, but no.
You take
even-
Battlestar over Star
Yeah.
Wars?
I think Battlestar, then the reboot.
Shut the... Okay, the reboot of Battlestar Galactica over all of Star Wars.
Yeah. Like
So-
as much as not in terms of like influence or whatnot, but as
Sure.
like what I'd watch. Yeah. Like, between like watching the trilogy for a day or watching that series.
I'll be damned, JD.
Honestly, as a kid though, I probably would have said Star Trek over Star Wars.
really,
Yeah.
Next Generation really.
Just
there
because
for
I
you?
grew up watching Star Trek Next Generation, and I didn't see Star Wars until I was like 12 or something.
Yeah, your parents kept you sheltered from. it.
Yeah, that's right. Really. Although Miller is also a big Star Trek fan, but I think he probably would give the nudge to
I think he would-
Star
Star
Wars.
Wars.
Let's all speak for him and say that. Yeah. So Dalen also wrote in and says, "Hey Ben, hello. I'm a huge sci-fi fan. Really looking forward to Andromeda. Us too. Join the game club. Star Trek is my favorite sci-fi universe, but every single Trek game is awful. I hear Star Trek Online isn't too bad, but I'm not a big fan of MMOs. Why do you think that a good Star Trek game doesn't exist? Also, P.S. Do you think No Man's Sky would have been liked better if Hello Games slapped a Star Trek skin on it? No, I
No.
don't.
I don't think they're I mean, the majority of them are garbage just because most high-end games are garbage, but you have like the shooter that they did, Elite Force or the Voyager one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a point and click one from like 1992 that people love who aren't even like Star Trek fans.
That's
like,
true.
Yeah, there are good Star Trek
we
games.
have a feature on the site actually. I think it's
Yeah.
like top 10
Yeah,
Star Trek
I
games
think
that
I
are
wrote
actually
that one.
decent. Yeah.
Yeah, decent. That's actually the headline. These are actually decent.
Well, Reeves, I remember people forget this game existed, but there is a game set in the J.J. Abrams Star Trek
Yeah.
universe, that co-op one with Kirk and Spock, which is an interesting idea.
I think I gave
it's
it a 6.
so bad.
It's
Well,
That was one of the
bad.
first games I ever had to review for a site and was
Yeah.
broken.
I thought it had promise, but yeah, the fact that it was super broken is what obviously made it terrible.
Yeah.
Also, what it turns out what might be one of the best Star Trek games. I mean, it looks fun and it kind of gets to that thrill of VR that Cork and I were talking about earlier. Star Trek Bridge Crew.
Oh yeah,
It's
that
coming
looks
out
cool.
March 14th.
That's
That's right
true.
around the corner.
And also, speaking of having a control panel with 2 giant buttons,
Hey, how much do you think Star Trek Bridge Crew costs?
I would be willing to spend $80. Is that how much that costs?
Shut up. Come on, realistically.
$20.
It turns out it's a $60 game.
Are you serious?
Get the hell out.
That is what
Yeah,
online stores are listing it as.
Get out of here.
Well,
Yuck, yuck, yuck.
So
looks
much
like a-
for that promising game.
I don't
Space Team
know.
is free, but
How are you going to get that many people to play with you? That's the
well,
problem.
play online.
I will say though, to his other point about like why all Star Trek games are bad, I think Star Trek, like the most interesting part about Star Trek is like the drama to it, which is why I think the people who were Star Trek fans kind of like balked at the J.J. Abrams reboot because it was more Star Trek action focused.
Yeah.
Whereas like Star Wars, like action is like a huge part of that franchise, so
Yeah.
it's easy to adapt to a game.
Well, I think it's Giant Bomb that always referred to Mass Effect 2 as the best Star Trek game ever made, where it's just kind of little bite-sized stories, just working your way through intergalactic
I can see that.
politics. Really, JV, you're so horrified by that?
They should
No,
totally.
not horrified. It's just like to me, like it's actually the opposite. Like Mass Effect became more aggressively Star Wars than
Certainly
Star
by
Trek.
3.
Yeah, by 3. Even 2 though, like it was all about. Well, we're prepping for an intergalactic war.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody like Telltale did Star Trek, I think they could probably do like the best Star Trek.
Yeah,
game,
I
though.
think that's what I was thinking.
I would
is,
go
like
that
I would play
direction
that
with
game.
it.
Yeah. Jeff Cork, how much
Mhm.
do you care about Japanese pronunciations?
Japanese pronunciations is
Yeah. Can you read this
passion
email
of
for me,
mine.
please?
I really enjoyed your Breath of the Wild episode, but noticed you struggling with some of the Japanese names and thought I could help. Former teacher, now a translator / interpreter. Japanese, I was stumbled over the word Japanese, so it shows you how much I care
It's-
about this.
It's really
This is
hard
Has
to
good.
pronounce.
5 set vowel sounds. They never change and they don't combine. They are
Don't combine. That's interesting.
A, pronounced as in car, so ah. I, pronounced as in ink. E. Yep.
Help me out, guys, after he says
okay.
it. Okay.
U, pronounced as in do.
Ooh.
Do. D. E, pronounced as in egg.
Eh?
And
Eh?
og.
Oh,
Pronounced as in open.
oh,
Even when next to other vowels, they don't change, unlike English. So,
Interesting.
anuma is pronounced aonuma. That's because Japanese syllabary. Do you want me to keep reading this?
I do. I think it's interesting. So we say
Aonuma.
ow because it's like, oh, A and O next to each other. But I guess
Aonuma?
they're all separate. They're little
Ao.
self-contained
Aonuma.
things.
Okay.
Aonuma.
Okay, it's a syllabary, not an alphabet, so it's built on separated sounds instead of combined letters. Each sound is voiced for an equal amount of time. So the name of rumored composer for Breath of the Wild would be Manaka Kataoka, with every single one of the A sounds pronounced the same and no emphasis on any one syllable. It's a flat language.
Hmm.
Even when you
Flat
have the
language.
same vowel in a row, they don't combine. You just say it twice, so it sounds elongated. So it'd be you, Suz, Su.
So it'd be
he's
It's
doing it
really
phonetically.
tough. Yeah, so it's Yu U Suke O Taka, because it's O as in Og.
yeah.
As he made it clear up there.
You pronounce it.
It's a puzzle.
Twice as long. You don't say it twice. I think.
Yeah, exactly. So oolong tea would be O long tea. I know that's I think it's a Chinese thing. Anyways, sorry for the overly technical linguistic email, but I figured as people who often talk about Japan, it'd be helpful to have a quick pronunciation rundown. I do think that's helpful. I really love that.
Yeah, for sure.
Then they say, this is Steven, by the way. You say, what was the first?
It's
What was the first game you played that you recognized as being Japanese? Obviously, many of us started with Mario and Zelda, but those didn't really feel particularly Japanese. Do you have a wow, this is a Japanese game moment?
Pokemon?
Why don't they seem
okay.
Japanese though? I guess. Is
I
the
don't
question.
know. I guess there's nothing really culturally that pops in those games.
Well, just Mario's so absurd. I think a lot of people would say like, oh, just the bizarreness of it is you're eating mushrooms and you're in a
must have
pipe
come from the
world.
weirdo country.
That's right.
For me, it was like, because there were so many articles coming out about like, oh, how this is a phenomenon from Japan. At the same
Right.
time, that like Power Rangers and stuff. Also,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a great one. So that's what, like 98. I think maybe Final Fantasy 7 was maybe the first one that I was like, oh, this is bizarre. What's
Mhm.
going on here? Oh, Japan's going on here.
It was usually like NES games that were mistranslated.
Right.
That like stuff that is like when you're younger, you have a higher tolerance for bad writing. But there's
Mhm.
some stuff where it's just like I can't parse this.
I am error.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, honestly, as a kid, it just seemed like everything came from Japan. Like I didn't know the difference, and so I
Yeah.
just assumed like
Yeah, your brother.
that's right.
By the way, Steven
That's
says, P.S. Studio Ghibli is pronounced as soft G, sounding like Ghibli. I'll be damned. I'm sorry. Thank
Like
you.
Giblets.
Thank you for the Japanese lesson. I appreciate it. Jose Piaro says, finally get around to playing Stardew Valley, and it's everything I didn't know I wanted right now. My older brother was always into Harvest Moon growing up, but he has never touched Stardew Valley. I tell him about it a lot, but he just doesn't feel like giving it a try. I want to slap him and make him play that game because I know he'll love it. The game, not the slapping part. That's a good joke. Are there any games you highly recommend to your friends and coworkers, but they don't feel like giving it a try, even though you know they would love it? Jeff Cork, will you finally play more Stardew Valley?
See, I'm very shallow here. I will play it when they release a patch where it makes it look not so ugly.
Oh,
Look, it is the
ouch.
weakest part of that game, but it's not worth not playing
It's
it just
not
because
that terrible either.
No, I don't mean like it's not the retro style
I know
or
what you
the
mean.
limited palette. It is how aggressively unpleasant the characters are to look at in their faces.
they're just a little stretched out vertically. I'm
They're
with
weird
you.
looking. It looks like I don't know.
Especially if
I
you're
don't
used to
wanna be
like
too mean
Harvest
to it.
Moon on Super Nintendo, which I think still
Very
holds
charming.
up artistically so
Absolutely.
well. I hear you. But on that note, you should play Dandy Dungeon on iOS. It's a free iOS game that I was
See,
showing you the other day.
I will say every time that you've recommended that I do something,
yeah.
like it's watch something or play something, you're like completely dialed into my sensibilities, and I should stop pushing back. So maybe I will play some more.
What is this
Stardew Valley.
storyline? For the last
Wow.
6.5 years, you have had the opposite storyline of like, oh, you keep recommending garbage to me.
That's well, it might be true sometimes, but like Frog Fractions, I think still
Right.
remains like probably your crowning achievement. I think.
Really.
Thank you so much. My
And you
finest work.
recommended that I watch the. This wasn't that much of a stretch, but the Michael Bolton
Valentine's Day special.
Valentine's
on
Day special on
Netflix.
Netflix, which I watched that yesterday morning.
Uh-huh.
No, maybe it was this morning. It was freaking amazing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very funny.
This might be a bit of a side tangent, but did any
Please.
of you guys play Glitterman Grove?
No.
Mm-mm.
I'm
No,
just
the
curious.
Frog
I started
Fractions
it,
too.
played it for like 40 minutes. and
Yeah,
I
that's
just
sad. I
wanted
was so
to-
interested in that story of when Frog Fractions 2 was coming out,
Yeah.
but yeah, never checked
But
it
there's
out.
a whole other game. Like I haven't even got to Frog Fractions yet.
Yeah.
I'm still playing Glitterman Grove.
Yeah, and I guess
Anyway.
it's like a friend of the creators of Frog Fractions had that idea for a game. So it's like, oh, well, how about you make that? And then it'll hide Frog Fractions in that. And it's a 1-2 punch. Adult
Yeah.
Swim will pay for it.
perfect.
Yeah. Well
Uh,
done.
In terms of games that I'm trying to recommend people to play, XCOM 2,
Nah.
there's nobody in the office will play.
I tried it at 15 hours or
Yeah,
so.
I think Hanson and maybe
Tack played.
Tack. That's right. I
Yeah.
knew there was somebody else.
Yeah.
Wolfenstein and Quadrilateral Cowboy.
Well, we like one of those. Is there somebody like you're recommending those two that just haven't checked it out?
Oh yeah, I mean, I tell my friends to play Wolfenstein, and they're like, it's a shooter. I'm not really interested in it. Just give it a try.
Yeah.
Give it a try.
Yeah, give it a try.
Yeah.
It's recommending this stuff is very hard.
Yeah.
It's very hard. Mike has an interesting question. He says, what is the most beautiful thing you've ever experienced in a video game? The one moment that took you by surprise in an experience that made you feel good about the world again. P.S. My pick is Shadow of the Colossus.
whoa!
I was
Made him
on
feel
there.
good.
Feel good. That's the
Okay, let's go beautiful. Let's just focus on what's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in a video game.
the ending of the first season of The Walking Dead, actually, with Lee and
Oh,
Clementine.
interesting.
Like, I don't think I've played anything that's topped that emotionally.
Just final interaction type
Like,
of thing.
just like how it's super smart and that it's basically presenting this heartfelt moment, not as just like a good emotional beat and an ending, but also like a tutorial, as in a tutorial thing for Clementine. Like, it's super smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's just so much that's well done there. So it's like pleasing emotionally and intellectually. You're like, oh, that's really clever. I like how they do this.
I'm pleased
Yeah.
intellectually.
This actually came out around the same time, but like Last of Us, and I thought the
Yep.
end of Last of Us had similar themes actually, and I thought it was really beautifully told.
So, okay, you guys are
And
taking an
the
interesting
The
approach
giraffe
to this.
moment in particular.
Oh,
is
the
what
giraffe
calls to
moment's
mind.
so
I
It's
mean,
like,
what's more beautiful than a full-grown giraffe?
hey,
The
well,
last-
that's what's interesting
yeah.
about it is because it is such a dark game that
Right.
you have this moment of beauty and like kind
Yeah.
of peace that it's more striking.
Yeah, I have a really dumb one that I think I brought up before, and Dan Reichert never stops making fun of me for it. But I was so struck by the Beck levels in Sound Shapes, which was on PS3 and eventually came to PS4. But I don't know if I just had one too many beers or whatnot when I was playing it for the first time. But it takes like war-torn visuals and kind of styles where it's like the city that missiles are raining down on, everyone's dying.
Sounds beautiful.
But then you navigate it and it builds upon like this really beautiful music. And there's something about like making this horrific scene beautiful musically and turning into like some weird engaging musical platformer and like spinning beauty out of this really disastrous scene just had me in tears. I was so struck by it. I still think Sound Shapes is
I
underrated.
mean, that's a great level, or that's a what is it, sound pack? Is that what they call it? Like, or it's
Oh, the
albums.
different-
They're presented as albums.
Yeah,
that
it's one
was,
of the bass ones though. It's not one of the
Yeah,
DLC or
I
anything.
loved it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love the Beck one.
Thank you for backing
Yeah.
me up. on that,
Post-credit
JP.
scene or the credit scene of Wind Waker, where you're just like checking in with like all the characters that you interacted with
Yeah,
before and see
yeah.
what they're up to. I think that's one of my favorite things in a Zelda game, and it always gets me.
Those scenes in the credits where they show all the characters you've interacted with, those are so good. Hey, game developers, put it at the beginning of the game.
You do have a really good point.
Yeah,
That way,
good
when you do
point,
see
yeah.
these characters, you'll be terrified of them.
That's right.
Yeah.
Tom from Hungary says, how do you feel about feedback on different platforms? Email, Twitter, GI site, YouTube, Facebook. Which is the most friendly environment? Which one's the most hostile? Do you have a standout feedback, a praise that you really appreciated, or a heated argument on some subject? How is the overall mood in the GI fan community? Not counting that I watched the entire Overblood Super Replay Facebook group because they are the hardcore fans. Good. I have a sick obsession with reading every YouTube comment, and I sit next to Jeff Cork, so
It's
I
it's
think
amazing.
several times a week I'll bring him over to be like, look how mean this jerk is. It is otherworldly.
No, usually what you do is you go, "Oh, that's some good feedback." I'll be like, "What?" And it's like, so and so has a voice like a beep, and it's just like the worst you could think of. Like, it's like, oh,
Occasionally,
there you
it'll
go.
take screen caps of that and send it to whichever editor they're talking about.
Did I do that
It's
to you
super
once?
flattering. Yeah, it's like,
I'm
oh,
sorry.
thank
I
you, that's
try and
great.
do it for flattering comments as well. If I see a nice comment, it's like, oh, I bet this person was self-conscious about this video, and here's a nice comment. So
Sure.
I'll send it their way. But YouTube is, I love it because it's like the raw take on
Sure.
everything, the good and the bad. There's really awesome, good perspective on Game Informer's content there in a positive way, and also just people wanting to drop every possible slur imaginable.
Oh,
of
yeah.
talking about JV's hair.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, I remember there was a really bad one for a test chamber that Ben and I did actually about Gears of War. It was the first time I ever, working for GI, I ever came up against like this level of comment. Like the first one was really nice, but like they were talking about, oh, how informed the video is and everything. And the comment below it was like, you guys don't know anything about Gears. You should kill yourselves.
Oh, yeah.
I was like,
kill
what?
yourselves.
Yeah.
That's
What?
a reason to murder
Kill yourself.
The
There's always
sweet
one
satisfaction that Jeff Cork is very into is then following that person's YouTube channel. Like, what are they uploading? And it's usually some dimly lit bedroom, and they're like just rambling on like a maniac. It's like, okay, I don't need to feel bad about it because this is not a rational, sane
This
person.
is like, it's very petty, but I do feel vindicated when I see like just utter garbage person. You're like, okay, well now I understand what's
Yeah.
going on with you.
Right. It
Right.
really sells them at a
I will
mystery,
say, like, our own website community, it seems like is largely pretty positive in the
Yeah.
comments. Like, I'm pretty
people are
happy
great.
that our
Not that we want to get our asses kissed all the time.
Yeah.
but
no, but like I don't know.
Be
You know,
constructive about it. Like
Yeah.
if like your go-to is just like someone's appearance or whether or not they should be alive,
Uh-huh.
maybe like reconfigure things in your life a
Right.
little bit.
I'm
It's-
not. I don't have good things to say about everything we do either. But
Yeah.
like, just like, there's no need to like go jump on the comments and be like bash people for they're doing
Yeah.
work. Like they're doing good.
Yeah,
like
bash
just
the
fact-
bash the work by all means.
Yeah.
But like making
bash
it personal,
them.
I
Yeah,
just am-
exactly.
I don't think
What-
that's necessary.
but
How
what
do you
about when
look
it-
dumb and all that stuff?
What about when it is personal, where they're not bashing, your review of the game, but they're
Mhm.
bashing, I don't know, the way you speak on a podcast? Is that a weird balance where it's like, well, that kind of is the work, is the way we're presenting our voices
Yeah.
out?
I mean, I
No.
don't care.
Yeah?
Yeah, it doesn't bother me.
Do we get a lot of that?
No,
Is
we're
it-
all great.
is it
Don't
all
read the
targeted
comments
towards
below.
me?
Don't read the comments
Oh.
below. It's all great.
I
It's
think-
all
no.
great.
I think as far as which platform is the worst, and I think this is all Brian Shea's fault because Shea has this habit where he'll read comments from Twitter aloud in the office for everyone, loud enough for everyone in our bullpen to hear. And it's
Yeah.
always just like garbage stuff, like some awful thing this person has said about our magazine or one of us. It's like,
Uh-huh.
why are you doing this?
Don't make everyone feel bad.
Yeah. But typically, I think that's why I think Twitter is the worst one.
Yeah. I think I'd go YouTube as the worst over that.
I feel
But
like YouTube's got to be the worst.
Yeah.
I've had pretty good feedback on
NeoGAF's usually great.
Twitter. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
NeoGAF's good.
even if they're harsh at times, like I
Yeah.
really appreciate that feedback. That's like a cleaner version of
Yeah.
that YouTube.
They're very
raw.
constructive.
Yeah. Let's see, real quick. Caleb from Dayton, Ohio says, "Dear GI crew, with the next gen of Pokemon Go going live, I feel like Niantic and Game Freak really missed the mark. You want to know why 44% of your online voters polled that they were out for good with Pokemon Go? Because the game doesn't have a classic turn-based battle system. If Niantic implements the actual battle system all other mainstream Pokemon games have, this becomes another huge wave of players coming back. I don't see why this is so difficult for Niantic to see. Do you guys have any thoughts or insight?"
I think they're like, there has to be some kind of like, you are not allowed to have this, because every spin-off Pokemon game does not have that battle system. Like, what was the one that they just had that's like a weird grid base turned and you're like flipping a coin? It's like the iOS one.
Oh,
You know what
yeah,
I mean? Like, it seems
yeah.
like everything seems just removed enough from being actual Pokemon because you're not allowed to step on the toes too much.
Do you think that's the idea? I just figured they thought like tapping violently in Pokemon Go
Yeah.
for combat was just more accessible to the iOS audience instead of like, okay, what is this? I have to learn 4 moves. How does the turn-based thing work?
I wish there was something more to it. I don't know if I need the full-on like turn-based system, but
Yeah.
like I don't know, matching a couple gems or something in combat that's a little more involved than just jamming on the button.
Yeah,
It's
that would
very
be really
stupid.
nice,
That was
yeah.
one of the few things I actually really dug about Fire Emblem Heroes.
Yeah.
Was that it was a streamlined, pared down version of the system that's in Fire Emblem, but at its core, it was still the Fire Emblem fighting system.
Yeah.
So, it'd be. I mean, I'd probably play more Pokemon Go, reinstall it if it did have something that was more exciting. Not necessarily like Ben saying, not necessarily the original battle system, but just something that's more involved.
Yeah, I can't wait. I mean, Johto Pokemon are fun. I think it has reinvigorated some enthusiasm for that game overall. But it's still just more than the Johto 80 that they added. If they just would revamp combat, add trading, add one-on-one battling, that would, I feel like, do so much more to get people engaged with that game again.
That'd be really nice.
I think
One-on-one
winter,
battling, yeah.
honestly, like the fact that winter came and a lot of people in the United States at least are not going to be spending a lot of time outside then.
Yeah.
It was not great timing for
It's
them.
starting
so
to
they-
warm up. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's Minnesota,
Yeah.
everybody. Michael from Grand Rapids, Michigan, also where it's cold, ladies and gentlemen, says, "I have a pair of questions for you. Would Dantech ever consider changing his name to Darnegius Tizzle?"
Yes.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
actually he's actually in the legal
He's at the
proceedings.
in the courthouse right now. That's why he wasn't able to come on the podcast.
Did you know that it costs, this is true, $500 to change your name?
Really?
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyways,
per name?
per letter. Anyways, then the great question of how do y'all like your eggs?
Over easy.
Is that really the
Over
question?
medium.
Yeah. Over medium.
Yeah, yeah.
You bumped
I like,
it up.
I like a little bit of
Over medium's good.
like congealedness.
I
if
hate
that's the right
I
word.
hate the juice. I go over hard, burn
Yeah?
it to a crisp, baby. I don't want any liquid anywhere near my egg.
Either sunny side
scramble?
up with pepper or scrambled with ketchup.
good.
Okay, ketchup drizzled, or do you dip it?
No, you don't drizzle it, but you have it there, so you.
Ugh.
dip it,
Ugh.
yeah.
Never use
Scram-
ketchup. Ugh.
I like scrambled, but scrambled has a higher chance of being runny. So that's why I go over hard all the
Oh,
time.
really?
Also, there's a weird psychological thing. I think a lot about eggs. There's a weird psychological thing where I feel like I'm eating more if it's still two eggs. I feel like I'm eating more if it's over hard fried egg versus scrambled. Like if you scramble 2 eggs, it's
Sure.
barely anything.
Mhm.
I
But what if
understand
you put a
technically
Wait,
little-
wait. Is omelet a good answer? Can we answer omelet?
I guess so.
Sure.
You want to be fancy
omelet.
pants?
Yeah, let's do
We'll put
omelet.
stuff in
Okay, that's
there.
the Battlestar Galactica of egg
That's the
answers.
best.
Hanson, do you feel more full if you put rat poop in there?
Ever told you guys this story?
No.
No, I'm good.
I'm glad there's a story.
Well, my house used to be invaded by mice, and I have a terrible habit of eating 2 eggs every morning and never washing the pan. Like months will go by, and I just will not wash it. And one morning, I noticed like, oh, it's extra crispy in here. Whatever, crack the eggs, eat it. And then it was after I'd eaten half of my fried egg, I realized, oh, these aren't average little crispies in that pan. This is a mouse that got into my egg pan, just crapped all over it.
Mouse?
Yeah. So that's the only way I can have my eggs now. I have to squeeze mice out
You
on top
live
of
in
them.
squalor.
It
Did you
was-
finish that egg?
Well, of course I'm not going to throw it away.
No,
It was horrific.
no.
Ate around it.
One of the grossest things.
Just
of
put
all
some
time.
sriracha on
You actually
there.
live
You're
in
good.
dishonored.
That's right. Okay, what question do you guys like?
Oh.
I don't like that answer you just gave. I know
Sorry.
that's for sure.
Mwah, mwah, mwah.
Yum, yum,
Oh.
yum.
Oh boy.
Okay, what question?
I like the touching moment one.
I like the one who corrected us on Japanese.
Wasn't that helpful?
I felt like it was pedantic.
Oh, how dare you.
Come on, how do you say that
I-
in Japanese?
I like the starting shooter one. I
Yeah,
think
that's
these are a
a good one.
lot of really strong ones. I like the
Yeah.
scary, non-scary game one.
That's a good
That's
one.
pretty good.
All right, I need you guys to...
I'd go with the starting shooter one or the scary, non-scary game one.
Oh, the two I just said. Thanks, JB.
still
I
don't
like
have
scary,
them, man.
non-scary. How are you guys
Yeah.
feeling about it?
Yep, works for me.
Reeves, something
Yeah,
else stand out for
let's
you?
go with your favorite.
No,
again.
what did you think, brother?
I said Japanese. The guy who
Japanese?
corrected us in Japanese.
It is
But
helpful.
so Cork, it's up to you.
Cork?
Scary, not scary.
All right,
Scary, not
there we
scary.
go. The gavel is falling.
Congratulations, Taylor from Macedonia, Ohio. We're
Steve,
going
I
to ship you out
tried.
something really nice. Thank you again to everybody that wrote into podcast@gameforward.com. We look forward to your emails in the future. For now, yeah, Reeves.
Never mind, you did talk about Game Club, right?
Yep, we talked
Okay,
about
yep.
that. That happened in the past.
Play our Game Club.
There we go. By the way, if you're new to this show, the idea with Game Club is we play a game alongside the community. You send in feedback to podcast@gameforward.com. We'll call out some questions, some topics, and it's a big community discussion. But for now, let's have a little discussion about the Nintendo Switch. We have our hands on it for a while now, so stay tuned to learn all about it. And welcome back to the Game Informer Show. We have a hot panel here. I'm still here. We have Ben Reeves.
How's it going?
Real good. We have Kyle Hilliard.
Hello.
We have Serial Vasquez.
Hello.
Welcome, everybody. So we're here to talk about finally getting extended hands-on time with Nintendo Switch. With the podcast, a while back, we talked about like first impressions of the controllers. But now we actually have the units in the office. And so we've been playing... We can't say what for a while. Those
we're playing
embargoes.
something.
Guess
Those
what?
embargoes
Comes out
are yet to
soon.
come. But just talking about extended time with the hardware, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. Kyle, you've been playing the most,
Yes.
I believe.
I have
What
not
do
been
you...
sleeping very much.
Perfect. That's just what we want for this podcast. What stands out the most after spending a lot of time with the Nintendo Switch?
So one thing, when we went to the event and afterward, you guys were hesitant about the Joy-Cons. And I was like, you know what? I like the Joy-Cons. I see myself playing with both the Joy-Cons.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's how I'm going to play it. It's going to be great. And I have totally turned around on that. And using the singular Joy-Cons by themselves does cramp my hand.
That's
I knew it.
interesting.
Yeah.
I was going the other direction after just spending, maybe like 10 minutes or so playing with the controllers again. I was thinking, Joy-Con separated, not as uncomfortable as I remember, but actually putting it on the dog head grip, I was like, this is actually, I can see this getting less comfortable
That's
over
fine.
time.
I'm totally reversed. Like,
Okay.
I've been using the dog head controller. It
Yeah.
probably has a real name. I don't know what it is.
Dog head
Not
is
as good
good
as
as
dog
dog
head
head.
is fine.
Heck yeah.
And I think that controller is good. It's comfortable. It's light. It's funny because once you put it in the dog head though, you don't really get to take advantage of the HD rumble because
Is that
it
right?
separates your hands from the actual Joy-Cons, and the rumble doesn't really extend to the rest of the
Does
unit.
it feel...
Disable rumble, or it just
it's still
doesn't?
there. You just can't really feel it.
It's just like wearing a condom as a layer, so you can't quite feel the full rumble.
I think that's what they were going for.
Is that
'cause
right?
They want it to be like a safety first kind of thing.
Yeah.
Be smart about playing.
Yeah.
the
Does it
Switch.
feel weird? Is it like it's trying to get through the layers of plastic? Does it feel awkward?
It's just like when you think your phone rings in your pocket
All the time, yeah.
Yeah, and you're like, wait, I got a text on it. It's kind of like that a lot. Like,
my
I think this
God.
thing rumbled.
That sounds uncomfortable. So someone wrote in.
It's not uncomfortable. It's just you're just missing. Like the rumble just doesn't. You don't really feel
Right.
it unless
Well,
you're
it's in
actually
your,
holding
if
the
it's in your
Joy-Cons.
pocket.
Some-
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
We didn't read it in the last segment, but somebody actually wrote in, still confused about HD rumble? Like, does the Pro controller have it? Do the Joy-Cons have it? Does every variant of the controller have it? So this, when it's in doghead mode, not so much, but Pro controller does have HD rumble, right?
It has all the features of the
Yeah.
Joy, including the sensor and the motion controls, which is why it's like $80, I think.
The Rumble, I want to play with it more, but based on the limited experience I've had, the Rumble feels different than the Joy-Cons do in the Pro controller.
Okay. It's more of like an SD rumble?
Still good. No, I mean it's still good Rumble.
It's
It's probably
analog.
just a.
480p rumble.
It's probably just a matter of the Joy-Cons are so small that when you have something so small rumble in your hand, it just feels different than when
yeah.
there's like a controller in both hands.
It's
Does that make
interesting.
sense?
So many people are excited about this HD rumble. I'd say that just the community at large is overall ready to rumble.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Ice Cube fans.
Yeah. What do you think about just,
absolutely.
I mean, the marketing ploy of HD rumble after having spent a lot of time with it, Kyle? Does it feel like something noticeable?
I mean, not in my experience, but I've also haven't played something that's sort of been designed around it.
Right.
You know, like
right.
I'm still optimistic about it. I think it could be cool.
Mhm.
I think it could be interesting. Out of the gate, there's nothing really like taking advantage of it, which is like there's a lot of stuff with the controller that's not being taken advantage of. Like the sensor, you know, on the bottom isn't really being used for anything yet, you know?
Right. It's still so early. I
Yeah.
mean, the screenshot functionality we've now been able to try out. We couldn't at that preview event. It's okay. It's quick.
I like
it's
it.
pretty seamless.
I like the sound it makes.
Yeah, you can
Little
you
snapshot
can
button.
jump in there then and kind of add text to the screenshots as well.
Mhm.
Something interesting I noticed is you start to add text. It's like, okay, this is kind of like Snapchat, adding text to an image, no big deal. But you can't actually like rotate the text or anything with the touchscreen.
Hmm.
The touchscreen seems pretty limited in that way because you're so used to just reflexively trying to like rotate and resize everything with the touchscreen. That's not an option. You have to just go through the menu and whatnot.
And we should clarify all these impressions are pre like big update. So that stuff
Yes.
could be added, but I don't probably not though. It depends if that function gets popular. I think maybe they'll expand it. and
Yeah, it
give
could
you
be.
stamps and
They
stuff.
already said they're going to be adding video capture. I'm curious how that works because right now it's so quick. Just press the button.
Yeah.
You hear a quick snap and then it saves. So if it has to give you the option of if you want video or photo, I wonder if that would just add a layer.
'Cause
Probably.
That's
Or if you could just like hold the button and create video, or how would that work? There's a lot
Right,
of questions
yeah.
about, obviously.
Right.
'cause
Yeah.
I like that, and I use it a lot with PlayStation. But there's just all these additional steps. I feel like it takes longer to take a screenshot on. It takes the longest on Xbox One and then PS4, and it's nice to be able to, because the operating system is pretty quick too. So it's really easy
Yeah.
to take a screenshot and go look at them. And I've actually already been using it as a way to keep track of things in the game I'm playing.
Oh, interesting.
Like if something is that I want to remember happens, I'll take a screenshot of it.
yeah. So
which-
many game over screens.
That's
Yeah.
right.
How
Serial-
long do you think it'll be fast though? Because like
Yeah.
like anything after a year or two of updates, like those things kind of
Yeah.
start to crawl. Like the PS4 original UI was fine. It was
Yeah.
fast.
Yeah.
They've been slowly patching it in. But Serial, you have a Switch pre-ordered. You're excited for it.
Yeah.
What do you think of the Pro controller so far?
I think it's okay. I think it. I think
Oh.
it works. I think as a decent. If you don't like the dog head, I think it'll work just fine. But parts of it feel stiff. I think the buttons are maybe a little bit too big, and I'm not a fan.
Too big?
A little. The button.
The face buttons are very
The
large.
face buttons are a little too
Okay.
big, and I think the D-pad's a little too stiff. Or I mean,
You're a big fighting game guy.
Yeah,
Like, you're
so-
very particular.
So the
with
first thing I tried
D-pads.
to do with any controller when I tested is do fireball and shuriken motions, and
Sure.
I my big issues with it is that it doesn't seem to really register, or it doesn't give feedback for like diagonal inputs. I think for D-pad select, like if you have weapons tied to the D-pad, I think it'll be fine. But
Yeah.
it seems like if you want to do any sort of practical motions on it, that it doesn't really provide that feedback. But otherwise, I think I like it. I think some people might be a little bit underwhelmed by the lack of analog triggers on it, but
Yeah.
I don't mind that at all. Like if the system isn't going to use it, then no real point in having it. And I was a big fan of the PS2's L2 and R2 buttons, so I think it's better than the dog head, but
Yeah.
I haven't had as much time with it as you guys have.
What about battery life? Have you guys run this thing through its paces yet?
I have not. I have been pretty consistently like keeping it charged just so I can keep playing. I haven't done the like timer yet.
Yeah.
I have seen the Switch, the screen battery get pretty low, but I have yet to see any alerts for the Joy-Cons. I've been playing like 2 days.
I think I got
Yeah.
about 3 hours out of it last night.
Does that have a
But I
special
didn't use a
icon
timer,
for-
so I need to use a timer for that.
when the battery's low?
You know what?
It
I actually
alerts
don't
you.
remember. Did you see
Yeah.
it like an alert?
Yeah, when it
Okay.
gets really low.
Does
it-
Toad pop up and say your battery's low?
Toad knocks on your door and
And says, "Excuse me, sir." Let me
kicks
wanna
you in
put
the nuts and
yeah.
then plugs in your
Uh-huh.
Switch for you.
Okay.
Reeves, what is your biggest impression of the Switch so far?
Biggest impression, I would say, I think they blew it with that controller.
The dog
Like
head?
the dog head,
okay.
like
Really?
the Joy Cons themselves
Yeah.
are too small, and I understand like their idea is like, let's have one controller that breaks into two and two people can play.
Sure.
Cool idea.
Trying to have a good time.
Percentage of times people are going to do that compared to percentage of times people are going to play that solo. What do you think that is? Like maybe 10%.
Well, you
At
never know, man.
best?
I think we're underestimating just like the ability to like just toss your friend a controller to play Mario
Sure.
Kart for a round.
Yeah.
You know.
Sure.
But
But-
I don't know. That's a good question.
But either way, you play it, it's kind of uncomfortable. So like the Joy-Cons by themselves are kind of uncomfortable. And even in the dog head mode, it feels like a huge compromise because the way the analog sticks are positioned doesn't feel right. The buttons feel too small.
It feels small in the dog head mode, but even in the I know we have these dumb nicknames. Even in the Vita mode where it's
Uh-huh.
attached to the screen, do you think it gets uncomfortable there?
After a long time, yeah. Like I had the same problem with my Vita, honestly. Like if you play your Vita for more than an hour, like it's kind of uncomfortable. If I play my DS for more than an hour, it's kind of uncomfortable. Like that's how handhelds are. So maybe that's fine because that's how handhelds are. But
Yeah.
when you're playing a console at home, like with a controller, you want something that's nice. So you almost have to buy the Pro controller to play this like a normal console.
Are we? If I'm reading this room correctly, it feels like playing the Nintendo Switch is like sleeping with a pea under your mattress. Is this the correct read on the situation?
Yeah, with a condom on.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I like the dog head. I think the dog head is a perfectly functional
Yeah.
controller for me. I don't know if we want to jump into more features
Please.
about it, but the kickstand is
Mhm.
really flimsy.
Yep. Did you have the same problem I did, Kyle?
Maybe.
So the second time I tried to pop this kickstand up, I actually snapped this thing off.
Oh, really?
Like, I was
Oh,
like,
and it-
whoa, oh, and then I looked around the room cautiously and then tried to like jam it back in there. And I was able to snap it back in. I think this is actually the one I snapped off. So, but it still works.
Yeah.
So I didn't technically break it.
I feel like that's
So
also
you're not liable legally?
So yeah, I'm fine.
kickstand aside. I feel like I'm impressed by. I guess I didn't really get a good intake or good perception of just how. I think it's relatively rugged. It seems like a solid piece of hardware.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like the metal tracks that you're sliding into. It's like a bizarre Lionel train or something. It's a weird.
Weird comparison.
That
It's
is-
a weird
yeah.
feel for Nintendo, isn't it? Just to have like those steel metal tracks.
Yeah.
I think the tablet piece itself, yeah, I agree, feels sturdy. I
Yeah.
like the screen actually a lot. I think the screen looks really good.
Oh, good.
Yeah, especially because since it's smaller than what you're seeing on your TV, it's compressing
Right.
images, so everything looks really sharp. Sometimes even better on the screen.
Does
Right.
it fit in pockets pretty well?
I fit it in my jeans pocket. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I haven't tried it into like a girl's pants because I don't normally wear my girl's pants.
Have you tried inserting it under your skin at all yet?
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
Have
do
you
that
put it up
test.
your nose? and
but
tried it
if
to-
you try to put it in your front pocket, you will not be able to sit down.
Oh,
comfortably.
okay.
So it's like a portable in the way that like an iPad Mini, let's say, is portable.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So let's get to the meat and potatoes here. UI. We've seen teases of it here and there, accidentally popping up in a Treehouse live
Mhm.
stream. This was what I'm really interested in. I just want to see how that UI looks. I love seeing the next generation of Nintendo design. What do you guys think of that layout so far? And again, this is probably the biggest qualifier for there's going to be a day one update. But out of the box, what do you guys think of the Switch UI?
I like it in its simplicity.
Yeah.
It's very clean. It's very snappy. It just puts the games up front, like front and center. There's just icons on the bottom row that you can access. Unlike the Wii U, you don't have to shut down your game to do internet settings.
Mhm.
Finally.
So
That is nice, actually. Yeah,
Yeah.
which you kind of think like, oh, that's new for Nintendo, and it's been around forever with like PlayStation, Xbox, I
Right.
think. But
yeah,
it
but
is nice that they finally.
Do you guys
do
think
that.
it works on that level? Do you think, because I feel like with Nintendo, it always seems like their interfaces are sort of alien in the same way that a lot of their tech is, in that it doesn't feel like it doesn't feel similar to anything else that people are doing. So do you think this is part of their approach of, we want to make it more in line with other people's standards instead of
Yeah,
blazing our
I
own
think
trail?
it does feel more approachable. It almost feels like a Samsung tablet or something. You
Yeah,
know,
I
it
see
has.
that.
I'm curious to see what it looks like once we really start packing this thing with software, because Kyle, you say like, oh, games are up front, it's great, but we have one game, so like I wonder when you have 30 downloadable games and you upgrade that hard drive, what that actually is going to look like trying to navigate that
make
space.
the icon smaller.
Because it's as clean as possible right now, and I agree. I think it looks nice right now.
Right. Well, I mean, what do you think would clutter it up?
Oh, just having to like, is it like sorted by whatever you launched most recently? Can you sort it alphabetically? How far are you going to have to pop over to the right just to find what you want?
Because the image for the game takes up pretty much the whole screen.
It's big.
So if you have a lot, like, do you have to swipe for a while to get what you want, or is it like the 3DS where you can pick the size of the icon?
Yeah.
Can you sort of sort between I want to have this game's save data? Like if I've downloaded, I want this game's save data to stick with me even after I delete the game, so I can make room for more games. Or is it?
I don't. We know that's one. I don't think we know.
I
yet.
don't think we've tested that out.
You
yet.
should just delete the game you're playing.
I don't want to do that.
I should say that me and Serial put up a video early this morning.
Yeah.
Where we kind of walk through the UI of the system, so you can go on GameInformer.com and check that out.
Yeah,
It
for
kind of
sure.
reminded
Nice
me
short
of
5-minute
Amazon
video.
of like Amazon interface of like an Amazon tablet more specifically.
Okay,
than anything
yeah,
else.
yeah. I could
The
definitely
text
see that.
especially seemed like it seemed like a modern machine in that sense.
You know, what was the weirdest detail of going through the system settings? Having a console system settings that has airplane mode. It's like, what a weird age for consoles.
That
man.
is weird.
You've never
huh?
put your PlayStation 4 in airplane mode?
All of the time.
Just want to
All
turn
the
off all the
time.
internet.
Screen brightness too is another weird thing. And then it was interesting. You scroll down in the settings too, and it's not up front and center at all. But like, there's a Me menu under settings. And you're like, oh
Surprisingly
yeah,
buried.
Mies.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
next to Amiibo in there, but it is far back there. It's there's also a section for themes, which I think eventually could get exciting in a 3DS kind of way. But right now it's white or black, dingus. Choose it.
Yeah.
You can
Wait.
choose a player icon.
You are not required to make a Me when you start up the
No,
console for the
I
first
don't.
time.
you have to choose an image,
Mhm.
and they have a bunch of like cool Nintendo.
What a weird
stuff.
holdover.
And I had to go into like more images to find the Samus one that I wanted.
Yeah.
It's, like, buried under all these Animal Crossing.
Samus, page 48.
Yeah.
She's in there.
Under unused.
Never touching again section. So you talk about the inclusion of being able to make a Me, and it looks like, man, if there are some differences for the options with eyebrows and stuff, they're pretty deep cuts. Nothing was jarring. It really looks like the classic old Nintendo Wii Me Maker, but it was so weird to go in there, no background music. And again, this is something that could very easily change with the day one patch and update to this entire UI. But Nintendo, for the last couple generations especially, I feel like the UI music is wildly underrated. Like the Wii's eShop music, everybody votes. Every piece of UI music, I think, has been fantastic.
They have one of the best video game composers in the industry in there. And
Yes.
He's doing like amazing user interface.
Maybe
Yeah, the
that's
Wii U
why.
soundtrack. It's so weird to say the Wii U soundtrack, but I really think it's great. So this was the biggest shock as I went through everything there. eShop isn't live yet, right?
No.
Right.
Went through everything in there. No music. What do you guys think of that choice?
You think it's because they're they've built themselves up now and they're trying to see the pressure. Oh, we have to nail this. This has to be our defining work of menu music. And
maybe
they're
it'll
just-
be tied to themes
yeah.
eventually. You know, if you have like the Mario skin, then it'll just play the Mario theme or
Well,
something.
it is a weird thing. I'm trying to think. The Xbox doesn't really have music, right?
Yeah,
But the
Xbox
PlayStation
does.
kind of has a
Yeah.
little
You can mute it.
hum.
You can also
Yep.
modify it too.
Yeah.
So having something like that, I feel, is normal. But it's weird that it's very sterile and quiet. Except
Yes.
for like one thing I do like is you press on like the news tab
yeah.
and go in there. I love those sound effects that they do. You go in and look at your screenshot gallery. Really good sound
System
effects.
settings.
You know, it's a very Nintendo touch too, because every different menu that you go in has custom little sound
A
effect
different
for
sound
that.
effect. Just
So-
like a little blip, like whoop, whoop.
And even if we, discredit the lack of music, I think those sound design details are really interesting. In fact,
They're
we
really
actually,
good sound effects to the point where I press the button. I'm like, that's a cool sound.
Hey,
Yeah.
Ben Reeves,
Yeah.
what if they went a little something like this?
Uh-huh.
So that's what the Switch sounds like, everybody.
It's like someone's playing electro
Yeah,
plane.
it's
It-
like
Actually, it does exactly like
Yeah.
electric
Scratching the inside of your brain.
Also, the sound when you go into the settings, which is that,
Yep.
it sounds exactly like a farm dying in the Age of Empires series. But that is something neither here nor there.
There's
They
also
stole it.
another
Once.
weird UI. I don't know if it's weird, but it's just interesting. The way you unlock it, there's no you don't touch the screen or swipe or anything. You just have to hit the same button 3 times.
Mhm.
So
What?
any button you want. You
On the
can
controller?
just
Yeah.
it's like just to acknowledge that you are a person actively trying to get into it. You just hit the same button 3 times.
Mike, you also have to look in a mirror
Mhm.
and repeat the name Nintendo Switch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
it's been
well,
around
actually,
3 times.
You have
Yeah.
to
That's
say
a-
it's
that's
a
a
me
button.
Mario. Is what you have to say. So.
So speaking of, I think you used the word sterile in there, Reeves. It's interesting. Some personality that's there in the UI, which is what we're here for, everybody, is in there's a news section.
Mhm.
And in that, they have a bunch of different art. Some of it's kind of like Kotabe style art. And it's just trying to lay out the functionality of the system now. I'm curious what all they put in there eventually. But one bizarre detail is everything in the news section as of now, which is just helpful tips. It says at the bottom, they try and make it, it's very, I don't know, it has a lot of personality. In the writing, it feels very treehousey. And then it says that every note is from someone named Amelia.
Oh man.
And so it's weird to kind of have
Oh,
this more
interesting.
sterile Nintendo design overall, but then in the news updates,
Very
here's your
personal.
friendly neighborhood Nintendo fan, Amelia, who's writing to you about battery life. It's really strange.
Is it Amelia spelled with 2 I's, like
No,
Amiibo?
nothing funky.
Amelia.
Just old, straight up Amelia. And now the question is, who is this mysterious
Amelia's going to be
Amelia?
the Amazon Echo replacement that they're going to make.
Oh.
Yeah.
Unclear if it is Miss Bedelia herself.
Yeah.
Amelia Bedelia?
Wow.
Do you guys have any other takeaways after spending so much time with the Switch?
I have been using it for its exact purpose, which is putting it on a TV screen, and then
its exact purpose.
we haven't really talked about it at all, though. The act of taking it out of the dock and putting it back in, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Like I have been playing in my living room, taking it out, playing in bed for a while,
Uh-huh.
playing in the car, and
In the
While
car.
driving?
while driving.
Okay.
It's I'm really good like
You can do
that.
both. You can hold them like this. And
I mean, once you lose enough sleep, you can handle anything.
You can do
sure.
anything.
Right.
Kyle modded his car so that
that's
he could
right.
play.
But I all that works really well. I really like having the sort of portable aspect of it, and it's a cool thing.
Sure.
It seems to slide into the dock. I have been having an easier time with it now than we did at the event. That was something we mentioned.
Have you played it
briefly.
in bed?
Yeah.
Has it fallen on your face?
No, because I was laying on my stomach.
You might. You should test.
I'll
it.
do that test.
We
yeah.
should do the thorough test. What
Yeah.
about, you said you're going to be fidgeting with it a lot, you thought, when you're going to be playing it, like sliding the Joy-Cons on and off. Has that been a thing for you?
No, actually, it
Oh,
has
good.
not, which I'm surprised about.
Are you saying you have something else to fiddle around with in bed?
The
Yeah,
Pro
my-
Controller,
my
obviously.
phone. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. But no, I have not been. It's actually it's a little sticky to get it out of there. I think
Huh?
on purpose.
Are we still talking about the same thing?
Yeah, I'm talking about
Now
getting
this
the
is comedy.
Joy-Cons out of the thing. It's not an easy slide in and out. Is what
Sure.
I'm saying. I wonder if those rails will get
Sure.
better.
You need
Oh,
something to
okay.
like.
All right.
All right,
Loosen it up.
everybody. All right.
just like a
Enough about the dog
Like a
face.
bad Switch controller. We
Yeah.
are off the
Oh.
rails.
And then I put the condom on, and then the
Anyways.
vibration disappeared.
Kyle, I have a question. Do you think that the fact that you're just using it like mobile some of the time and like on the TV some of the time is just a fact that like it's kind of novel? Do you think that'll wear off eventually and you'll just like eventually play on your TV the whole time?
I am a human person who will play PlayStation 4 in his living room, and then I will take the console up to the bedroom and play it on my bedroom TV. So I think I will consistently use it that way.
So
'Cause I-
years down the road, you're still going to be moving around with the Switch.
Yeah, I think so. Because I do it with my PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. I move it around the house.
What about your Wii U trajectory? How often did you play on that Wii U screen?
Pretty often.
Really?
Because I have a kid, so she would be watching TV. Like I played all of like Donkey Kong Country, on the tablet.
Yeah.
So, but that's
I'll
also
be
my
damned.
specific experience. Like you guys probably play more PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, where I'm playing more DS and Vita and stuff like
Right.
that.
No, I can back you. I played most of Shovel Knight on the Wii U.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, this is exciting. New console, everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are still in the very early days. Obviously, when it comes out March 3rd, we get that update. We'll have a much better idea. Fingers crossed for eShop Music. Fingers crossed. It's got to be good. It's got to be good.
It's going to be their masterwork.
What if it's just Koji Kondo like humming, just like
Katamari?
style?
Done. Done.
It's going to be a 6-movement opera. It's just going to be the longest. 4 hours of menu
It's
music.
like planets.
They're going to
Yeah.
release it for like $30 as like a vinyl.
Oh,
Sign me
I
up.
can only
Yeah.
hope.
All right, but Kyle, you can talk about that big review coming up real soon. So definitely stay
Yeah.
tuned to the podcast. We'll talk all about it. As for now, completely disconnected. Check out Game Informer Zelda Hub for a ton of Switch features and interviews with Miyamoto. Everything good from Nintendo.
I think we're still posting stuff. at
Heck
this
yeah,
point.
we are, man.
Yeah,
Miyamoto and Enuma
that's right.
Don't forget about them.
together.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Game Informer Show. Be sure to tune in next week. We'll have a new episode waiting for you. Bye, everybody.